In the darkness, pairs of hands reached out as if to grasp someone, followed by extremely somber prayers. Saintess, the representative of the divine, with your blood, please save us from our suffering. This tiresome scene, as I saw it, was my only future. Noemi pursed her lips, furrowing her brow, thinking, death. When those hands reached out and touched her face, that voice echoed again, begging you to bless our future, we implore you. Noemi tremblingly grasped a hand, struggling to speak. Everyone's future, huh? At that moment, another voice suddenly rang out. No, I bless you, my beloved wife. After that sentence ended, Noemi also startled awake, gasping. Seeing her whole body drenched in sweat, a male devotee worriedly called out, "Ah, saintess!" Noemi stared blankly at the surrounding scene. She let out a soft sound, "Ah," then thought to herself, I can see the future when I touch someone's skin. Everyone calls this a life blessed by the divine.
But as God's wife, I only do what the deities allow. It is merely a cursed life to bestow false blessings. Naomi lifted the female devotee's chin, saying softly, "There will be news very soon. Good tidings will come quickly." The male devotee beside them immediately broke into a happy smile. Thank you, saintess." The female devotee, wiping away tears, said, "Thanks to you, the child finally—" Naomi straightened up, avoiding their gaze, and replied, "Everything is thanks to Olakin's salvation and benevolence. You too should give thanks to him." Having said that, she thought to herself, "There will be a child. The child is not yet 10 months old. It will quickly improve. Do not worry about it. There is nothing I can change." At this moment, an old priest approached and said, "Saintess, it is the priest's duty to observe everyone. Your spiritual power has permeated the world. You should take care of yourself to avoid being defiled."
Seeing her glance at the kneeling worshippers on the other side, he then said, "That is our duty. We will take care of the remaining worshippers. Would you like to go inside and rest now?" Noemi asked, "If possible, may I go outside for some fresh air? I believe it will help cleanse me of this mundane world." The old priest frowned awkwardly. "You won't," Noemi sadly finished his sentence, "interact with the common folk, I know." The old priest then said, "You must return to the mansion within half an hour." After nodding, Noemi turned and walked out. As soon as she was out of sight, the old priest called out, "Hey!" A young priest who was passing by immediately stopped. "Yes, what is it?" The old priest said, "Have a servant follow her." Outside, the night sky was lit by fireworks. Noemi mused. Every year on the divine's birthday, people flock to the temple. I see more and more of their futures, but I can only answer when the deities permit. Everyone leaves words of gratitude at the place where I will soon be consecrated. It would be better not to see the future at all. Suddenly, a child's voice rang out from the gate. "Oh, excuse me, miss, you dropped your glove." Noemi startled and looked down at her hands. "Ah, thank you, little worshippers," the black-haired boy exclaimed. "Oh, it's the saintess." Beside him, a little girl said, "Wow, it's really her." The black-haired boy marveled again. "She's so beautiful." The little girl beside her suddenly asked, "Is it true that the saintess can see the future?" Noemi silently thought, "The divine's birthday is here, and all the people come to this place, but only those deemed worthy to question the deities are allowed inside." Before she could answer, the black-haired boy said, "Of course it's fake. Do you believe that? How can humans see the future?" The other little girl angrily asked, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Apologize to the saintess." At the same time, Noemi suddenly burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, it's all right. Hearing that reminds me of someone. On this very day a year ago, someone said the exact same thing, with expressions just like yours." Then she wondered, is that person also at the festival today? The arrogant Sir Theo Piga. At that moment, the person she had just mentioned, Theo, stepped up behind her. He was completely drenched and angrily asked, "Noemi Belton, so you're hiding here. What kind of girl are you, like a witch?"
"What kind of nonsense did you pull on me? A year ago? Also on the god's birthday?" Behind the bustling crowd, Theo asked suspiciously, "Didn't you say we were going to see our aunt? Why are we at the temple?" Rorik replied, "The elders told you to offer it to God on behalf of the family." Theo scoffed, "Ha, as if that would happen for a money-grubbing wretch like me." He touched the box in his hand, thinking angrily, "Those old geezers have so much money, they should have used it to reclaim the stolen inheritance." At this thought, Theo couldn't help but ask loudly, "Do the people here have no brains? Why are they pouring money into superstition like this? I bet those priests are getting fat off all this wealth." Rorik quickly warned, "Watch your words. 3 years have passed since our aunt died, and it's by the grace of Lord Olak that both of us are standing here." Theo thought irritably, "I'd be perfectly fine if I never saw you again." Rorik continued, "On the way here, I saw that the Big Dipper and Libra were aligned. Because Olak's energy has filled the sky and the earth, we were able to arrive safely without getting lost." Theo interrupted, "Not exactly, brother. The reason we arrived on time is because we could see the Big Dipper thanks to this clear sky."
"Let's just say I've already made the offering. We can split it in half and enjoy it. I'll make sure the elders never find out, so there's nothing to worry about," Roik said helplessly.
Theo, don't forget you're here today as the representative of the entire family. Even after entering, Theo still thought puzzled. This is utterly ridiculous. He only made me do this because he didn't want a cue, didn't he? He always shares other things fairly. Just as he thought that, a voice suddenly rang out in front of him. Welcome. Upon seeing Noemi, Theo was stunned, his eyes wide. Meanwhile, Noemi extended her hand and said, Please tell me your name. Theo slowly presented the box in his hand. His hand unconsciously squeezed the box, thinking to himself, This charade of yours, just end it quickly. Then he knelt down and said, My name is Theo Fidgar. Please bless me. Noemi replied awkwardly, Ah, all right. Mr. Fidgar, you... After touching Theo's face, Noemi unconsciously frowned.
After a moment, she continued, You will soon achieve something great. I congratulate you on your upcoming good fortune. Theo asked skeptically, Is that so? He thought to himself, anyone could say such words to get paid. Noemi replied, Yes, do you have anything else you wish to offer to God? Hearing this, Theo grew even more contemptuous. How surprising. Some people work their entire lives just to buy a single flower, but with just a few insincere words, she could collect a whole bunch at once. Don't you find it amusing? I think the value of these flowers would be quite laughable to someone like you. Faced with Noemi's bewildered expression, Theo added, Well, I'm going to make my offering now. Just as he turned to leave, Noemi suddenly called out loudly, Sir Theo Fidgar. Halted by her, Theo irritably asked, Who do you think you are? Noemi said seriously, Don't go far. I will show you the true divine power that you are mocking.
A light flashed in her eyes. After seeing the future, Noemi continued, Exactly 1 year from this day, a business you own will receive a huge deal, but because of it, you will incur a deficit so severe it will be very difficult to resolve, and you will undoubtedly return to this place. Back in the present, Theo angrily exclaimed, My most perfect ship was smashed to pieces, and all the inventory was lost at sea. Everyone almost died. Is this how you force your beliefs on someone? Noemi loudly replied, I would never do such a thing. Theo demanded, So are you trying to tell me that was truly Olak's doing? Is that the God everyone believes in? Give me another prophecy from God quickly, and I'll show you how ridiculous they are. The moment she touched his face, Noemi suddenly saw herself being embraced by Theo. Then the two shared a kiss. When they separated, Noemi was startled back to the present. Gasp, she thought in astonishment. What exactly is the future I'm seeing now? What was that just now? Is it truly this man's future or my own? Seeing Noemi remain silent, Theo pushed her hand away. Noemi was so lost in her own thoughts.
Seeing him, Noemi frowned, thinking the priests had sent someone to follow her again. Should she go back? If so, she would surely become a sacrifice. After a moment of thought, she suddenly pulled Theo's hand and said, Sir Theo, this way. Seeing Noemi about to run away, the priest quickly shouted, Miss Noemi, but she didn't.
Slowly, but Noemi didn't stop. As a result, they both fell into a small alley. Coincidentally, a priest holding a lamp looked in their direction, saw no one, scratched his head and muttered, It must just be the wind. Inside the alley, the scene Noemi had envisioned came true. The two of them were kissing, and
If you want to compensate for the remaining damages, come see me again tomorrow. After saying that, she thought again, if I were by this man's side.
Theo looked down and exclaimed, Oh my God, it's so high. Noemi eagerly asked, You're here? He climbed in, reluctantly saying, You told me to come. Noemi suddenly held up a notebook. Sir Theo, sleep with me. After a moment of silence, Theo asked in surprise, Do you know what you're saying? Noemi opened the book and read aloud. It's about a man and a woman spending the night.
Theo's eyes widened in surprise. He grabbed her hand and loudly asked, How do you know about our family heirloom? Noemi stammered, I saw it in your future. Theo gritted his teeth, thinking, This woman, she can really see the future. Noemi added, I will tell you how your commercial enterprise will recover and how you will obtain the Iron Crown, so please, help me. Theo squinted, thinking to himself, These guys came too fast. It seems they had been monitoring her from outside from the very beginning. After a moment of stunned silence, a guard quickly approached, pressing a spear to his neck. You, step back quickly. Another guard then approached Noemi, asking, Are you all right, madam? Theo said seriously, You'd better keep your promise.
Noemi whispered hesitantly, then paused. Please, Pope. Her father, Hector, raised his hand to signal, and the one administering the punishment immediately stopped. He stood up and called in a deep voice, Noemi Bellon, you are the woman who will be offered as the wife of God. That servant doesn't know why he was beaten, because no one is to know the sin he committed.
Seeing no one in front of him, Rowett called out in confusion, Theo! At this moment, Theo was sneaking back into the mansion, thinking to himself, I don't care about them dragging me along, but she didn't tell me anything about the heirloom. How could I be foolish enough to give her what she wants before she gives me a proper answer? I can't believe I'm foolishly doing this again for her. As he poked his head around the corner, he suddenly heard a priest lamenting. Poor Miss Noemi. Although they were born at the same time, one has her portrait displayed like this, while the other lives in such misery. The priest next to him also added,
It's truly unfair. In her case, the saying, beauty is a sin, is literally true. She only bears the title of wife of God, but in reality, she lives a life worse than death. Lord Enzo, on the other hand, is happily married to a young woman, while Miss Noemi must not be of this world. The first priest, hearing this, said fearfully, "Shh, speak softly. What if someone hears us? It's a pity for such a beautiful young girl. Her life is truly more tormented than ours." After hearing this, Theo lowered his gaze and thought, and here I thought she was a princess living in luxury, wasn't she? At the same time, Noemi was sitting in her room, sobbing. Hick.
She thought to herself, nothing could be changed, nothing could be altered. That's just how the gods are. That's just how her fate is. She will have to die. Just as she thought this, someone suddenly tapped her shoulder. Noemi jumped and cried out, Who's there? Theo replied in a soft voice, Me, it's me. Seeing him, Noemi said in surprise, Mr. Theo. Theo suddenly asked, Are you the sacrifice? Noemi was stunned for a moment, then 2 streams of tears appeared on her face. As soon as he heard her make a soft sobbing sound, Theo panicked and said, Cry a little quieter, for heaven's sake. Noemi tried to suppress her voice, making a soft, sobbing sound. A little more time passed. Theo said angrily, How can humans sacrifice other humans to the gods? I just can't understand it. Noemi explained, We have to do it that way so the gods won't get angry and will bless humanity. A very long time ago, it said that a god said so.
Theo thought silently. No matter what he did, the elders would disapprove. He unconsciously clenched his fist. He continued to think to himself. They believed that only what they said was right. A nobleman owning a business, he would surely destroy the entire family. After recalling his own experiences, Theo suddenly felt sympathetic, scratching his head as he said, Let's say God wants a wife, but do you really want to be God's wife? Noemi replied, No, I'm constantly terrified. I've always wanted to escape it, so I tried to resist. But nothing changed. In the end, I'll just die. Theo said seriously, If you don't want to die, then you don't have to die at all. From now on, live the life you want, completely free from that status as a devotee. To avoid becoming a sacrifice, what if you married someone who isn't God? Noemi looked up, tears welling up in her eyes, and said, But who would marry me? Marrying a saintess means forsaking divine grace. Theo said, So it must be someone who isn't afraid of Olak and needs your prophetic abilities. Coincidentally, I know a country that allows marrying people like you. He uttered a name in a low voice. Slan, I already know I'm not afraid of God. I need your power. Therefore, marry me. When I was working in Slan, I saw them. They were free to love and marry as they pleased. Noemi said with a hint of worry.
Seeing her remain silent, Theo added, If you become a normal woman, the people here will no longer have any reason to hold on to you. You will gain the freedom you yearn for, and I will also have what I want. After hearing him speak, Noemi couldn't help but agree, thinking, Yes, as he said, this isn't a one-sided benefit. This is a mutual agreement. After making her decision, Noemi solemnly said, Very well, I accept your proposal. And so, the next day, a boy ran around everywhere with a newspaper, shouting, Hot news here, the saintess is engaged. She will marry Sir Theo Fidgar. Today's news reported their wedding announcement at dawn, and the people who read the news immediately buzzed with excitement. Can a woman like her truly get married? So, do we still need to call her the saintess? At Bellingham Manor, Hector threw the hourglass to the ground, angrily asking, What do you mean? How can you not know where Olak's wife is? Enzo replied, A few horses are missing. It seems she traveled by road. Hearing this, Hector clenched his fist and said, That woman, she's practically begging to die. Go find her immediately. Enzo immediately took the order. Yes, Your Holiness. I will certainly find her and bring her back to Olak's arms.
In the middle of the street, a group of horses was galloping past. Behind them was a group of knights, urging their horses onward while shouting, Over there, I see the saintess. As soon as he finished speaking, a holy knight swung a lasso. After spinning it once, he threw it straight at the rider in front. Struck on
The ship quickly left the dock. After a long while, Theo reached out and took a bird. Seeing this, Noemi suspiciously asked, Theo, why are you carrying a bird? He replied, I have a good friend living in Slan. Theo raised his glass to drink, staring at Noemi as he thought. 2 more days until they reached the black rock of the wasteland. After crossing it, he could ask him for help. But the problem, he thought,
Theo paused again, feeling a little doubtful. Why isn't she tired? Then he smiled again. Watching Noemi dancing happily over there, he mumbled, Is this the first time she's ever been this happy?
I can see a bird flying, but I don't know where it will fly to. Theo turned away, muttering, That really bothers me. You're a prophet, yet you don't know everything.
Theo said slowly, It's a fertile and vibrant land where free people live. It's like an oasis in the desert. Noemi murmured, An oasis. I hope, like its name, we can find solace there. The next day, across the vast desert, Theo and Noemi rode forward on a single horse. After a while, Theo suddenly pointed and asked, Seeing their recklessness, I thought there would be something different, but I guess I was expecting too much. As soon as he finished speaking, he released his hand, and the arrow flew out. With a whoosh, it embedded itself in Theo's horse's rump.
The horse immediately bucked in pain, and Noemi was simultaneously thrown off the horse.
Ah! Let him go, she thought to herself. Her brother would never let her die, because she was a sacrifice to God. Then she said aloud, I said let him go. I won't go back there for any reason. Enzo asked, stunned, You're just a rat cornered. Why do you keep fighting like this? Suddenly a voice rang out. Very quickly, the entire group of knights was surrounded. The voice from earlier rang out again. We have a saying in Slan. Wherever the shadow of our mother stone touches is our land, though you may not have heard it. At this, Pierre suddenly turned to Theo. You assured me in your letter that you would at least arrive safely.
Just as Theo spoke, Pierre enveloped him in a hug. He said cheerfully, How long has it been? Theo sighed helplessly. You're still the same, huh? You did great, Pierre said with a laugh. I have to show them how close we are.
Ahead, Pierre spoke again. I thought you'd be single your whole life, but it turns out you're quite romantic after all. Theo angrily said, Shut up. Seeing this, Noemi thought,
Pierre said, We're almost there. It's been a long time since you were a guest here. Theo extended his hand towards Noemi. Here, take my hand. After helping her dismount, Theo asked.
The flower began to consume an enormous amount of water, enough to destroy the land and deprive everyone of drinking water. Eventually, Anthera became a barren land, and even that flower withered and died.
Theo frowned and thought, Is what he said about Amathana related to her? If that's true, then they can't be allowed to know that Noemi is a saintess. At this moment, Pierre raised the wine glass in his hand and said, Come on, come on! Today we have a special guest. Let's welcome our friend who has never forgotten our land. Theo rested his chin on his hand, smiling, and said, We meet often enough already. Pierre replied, Yes, but this is your wife's first time here. Just enjoy yourselves. Theo glanced at Noemi, thinking awkwardly, This is bad. There's a chance everyone will know if we keep talking to them. Huh? That? Damn it, that! I forgot her gloves have the flower emblem engraved on them. There's no way the people here wouldn't know what that is. At this, Theo quickly whispered into her ear, Noemi, I think it's best to take off your gloves. It's proper etiquette in this country. Noemi looked at her bare hands with doubt. Theo then said, I'll hold on to them. She nodded upon hearing this. Oh. Suddenly, Pierre set his beer mug down in front of the two of them and asked,
Pierre asked in surprise, Oh, really? The daughter of an official's family, you said. You're married, huh? As dusk fell, Enzo led his knights back to the capital. A knight suddenly exclaimed in surprise, Sir, that's the royal flag. Enzo immediately looked up at the red flag fluttering before them, then shifted his gaze to the company of knights below. Another knight asked, Why are the royal knights here? Enzo replied, They're probably on a reconnaissance mission. Let's go greet them. Then he spurred his horse forward and said, Greetings, Sir Hugo. Hugo smiled and said, It seems your family has been through a lot lately, hasn't it? Enzo thought to himself, The royal family is extremely controlling, and among them, Hugo Montemont has the worst reputation. Outwardly, he calmly replied, It seems rumors spread quickly, don't they? But I believe this will pass soon. Hugo silently looked at Enzo. After glancing over, he then scrutinized the wound on Enzo's face for a moment, to the extent that the knight behind Enzo broke out in a cold sweat.
Hugo just smiled and said, Is that so? Good luck. Then he spurred his horse forward. As he rode past Enzo, Hugo whispered, Your army seems too weak for what you intend to catch. Enzo silently gritted his teeth, his hand unconsciously tightening its grip on the reins. Angrily, he thought, Noemi, you'd better hide somewhere far away, far enough that I'll never find you. Hide and protect what's precious to you, from my hands. As night fell, the streets became quiet and deserted. In a certain tavern, people were cheering, Go for it, Commander. Jonah, victory is certain. Theo and Noemi sat observing from the side. Suddenly, Theo glanced over and thought, Should I let her rest first? This is also a good opportunity since Pierre is distracted. Suddenly, an old woman approached and called out, Hello, girl. Noemi, bewildered, replied, Yes? Upon hearing her, the old woman excitedly asked, Hee, let's go play over there. You'll have plenty of time with your handsome husband later, won't you? Noemi felt confused. Huh? A few seconds.
Do you want to stick by your wife all day, as if you were some great romantic? Come here and face me. A few minutes later, an excited subordinate shouted, Get ready, go! Amidst the cheers of everyone around them, Theo and Pierre began to exert their strength to arm wrestle each other down. Suddenly, Pierre spoke up. We have a saying in Slan. When two people are in love, a hawk begins to fly around them, getting acquainted with the couple, because it will bring them a child later. Theo's face lit up with a puzzled expression. Seeing this, Pierre smiled and asked, What, do you see a hawk? Theo clenched his fist and warned, Go any further and you'll be harassing someone's family. Pierre whispered, Harassment? How could I dare offend such a precious saintess? That gray hair and those silver eyes, she could only come from a distinguished family. The moment you heard the name of the flower, you knew it was connected to her, didn't you? How long do you plan to keep silent, Theo? Meanwhile, outside, Noemi was staring at the cards, pondering.
On the other side, the old woman furiously lunged forward and grabbed his neck. I'm so mad, should I break?
Pierre suddenly snatched the glove from Theo's side, adding, Don't carry this around anymore, unless you want to die. It's getting darker and darker.
Inside the inn, a local was guiding Theo and Noemi to their resting place. At this moment, Theo felt a pang of sadness, telling himself they would leave tomorrow. Should I be grateful he didn't kill me on the spot? It seemed he wouldn't change his mind, so it was best to leave at dawn. Noemi, walking behind him, looked no better, her eyes filled with unspoken thoughts. Her hands clutched her skirt tightly, hiding her own remorse. She blamed herself internally, thinking the village had become like this because of her. That was why Theo wanted to conceal his identity. Suddenly, the guide stopped and turned, saying, "Here we are, this is your room." Theo, bewildered, asked, "Only one room?" Hearing this, she chuckled and replied, "Of course, you two are married, aren't you? It might not look like much, but the bed is quite luxurious. This is the ideal place for you two to—" At this, Theo bristled, loudly interrupting, "Whoa, all right, thank you." As they opened the door and stepped inside, the simple bed was covered with rose petals arranged in a heart shape, looking very romantic. Even the bathtub was strewn with flowers and adorned with candles to enhance the intimate atmosphere.
Seeing this, Theo thought to himself, the decorations are quite elaborate, aren't they? He awkwardly scratched his neck and said, "You sleep on the bed, I'll sleep on the chair." Suddenly, Noemi tugged at a shirt. "Theo," she said, "this place seems to be negatively affected by Olak. I can't keep pretending I don't know anything anymore." Theo turned to look at her. Then he suddenly remembered Pierre's warning. "Don't take this thing around anymore, unless you want to die." Theo quickly grabbed Noemi's shoulders. Then he frantically exclaimed, "What did that bastard Pierre say to you? Did he hurt you? Did he threaten you while I wasn't here?" Hearing this, Noemi immediately realized, "So you know. Why didn't you tell me?" Theo replied in a low voice, "It's not a good thing." Noemi immediately retorted, "You should let me decide for myself."
Theo slowly let go of her hand and spoke. "It will only make things uncomfortable for both of us. Pierre has also found out. We will leave by dawn." Noemi frowned in protest. "I want to stay. There must be a way to help this place." Theo immediately turned back, irritated. "Do they look like they need the help of a saintess? You should consider yourself lucky they haven't discovered you." His words brought back the old man's earlier remark. Yes, if it weren't for that person called a saintess, every day could be as joyful as today. Noemi froze when she heard Theo's final statement. The best way she could help them was to leave quickly. After calming down, Noemi clenched her fists. Then she spoke. "I don't care about those things. There must be another way I can help." Theo suddenly interjected. "Isn't living as a sacrifice enough for you? Why do you insist on choosing a life where your chances of dying are very high? It's too foolish." Realizing he had overreacted, he stopped. At this moment, Noemi spoke softly. "That wasn't my decision, but now it is. I'm doing all of this to escape that life, but you keep saying the same things the priests told me, to pretend not to know anything, that it won't help. You are actually just like those people." Theo loudly explained, "Those people are just taking advantage of you, while I—" He suddenly stopped. At this moment, Theo realized that he was truly no different from them.
On the other side, Noemi lowered her eyes and said, "I finally know what freedom feels like, but now it's as if I've returned to that hell." Hearing this, Theo turned his back and instructed, "Go to sleep, I'm going out for a bit." With that, he quickly opened the door and left, leaving behind Noemi's lonely figure. A few minutes later, Noemi lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Her mind was filled with thoughts. "I'm so angry, but all I can do is run away. I can tell people about their misfortunes or fortunes, and that's what scares me. Nothing can be changed anymore, and everything will go back to how it was. No, I have to change it. If I don't, no one will." A moment passed, and Noemi was woken from her sleep. She slowly opened her eyes. Noemi looked at the field in front of her and instinctively exclaimed, "Huh." She felt confused. "Where am I?" At this moment, a voice echoed from the opposite side. "After leaving my embrace, you've only faced difficulties, haven't you?" A young man with silver hair and a snake tattoo on his neck gradually appeared. Noemi slowly stood up and asked, "Who are you?" Olak snapped his fingers after hearing this. "Ah, this form isn't familiar to you, is it?" "Yes, I suppose it's hard for others to recognize me based on how I'm described." "Is this familiar?" Noemi's body trembled slightly. "This is—" On the other side, Olak flashed a sinister smile. "I've been waiting for you for quite a while, my dear wife."
"I'm also starting to get bored, so I think it's time to bring you back to me. That's why you should return to where you belong, and wait for the day you come back to me." Naomi looked at Olak's outstretched hand in front of her, then hesitated. A few seconds later, she softly called out, "My lord." Olak affectionately asked, "What's wrong, my dear wife?" In response to his tenderness was Naomi's firm voice, "I will not go back there." Olak wondered, "Why?" Naomi honestly replied, "I don't feel right living such a life." Olak's voice slightly deepened. "Are you saying there's something wrong with the life I've given you?" But Naomi didn't realize. She sadly confided, "I was nearby, and then I heard her scream." Just now, as he passed Noemi's room, Pierre, "I am not seeking forgiveness. You can be angry and curse me, but
but don't make me pretend as—
He then dismissed the thought. All right, the ground can cry all at once, but I need to go apologize to her first. With that thought, Theo headed towards Noemi's room. He kept repeating a single phrase. I'm sorry. I want to apologize to you. I'm truly sorry. After practicing for so long without success, Theo could only think, it's just an apology. As Pierre walked past Theo, he deliberately bumped his shoulder. Then he walked straight to the door without looking back. Theo immediately turned to Noemi and asked, Did you tell him you wanted to stay? Noemi replied.
Pierre looked around and asked, Isn't Theo joining us? Noemi replied in a low voice, Yes, he said he needs to make plans regarding our situation. Then she thought to herself, He gave permission.
So how do you find water with your divine power? You can touch my people as you did with your followers. Noemi asked in surprise. I can? Pierre asked bewildered. So what? Noemi immediately explained.
Pierre quickly ran to support her and said, Be careful, you can't even stand steadily, you need to be a little more careful. The moment Pierre touched Noemi, she saw his future again. Noemi wondered, Is he going to die too? Pierre asked worriedly, Something seems wrong, you haven't said a word this whole time. Noemi lowered her head and replied, Well, so far I've only seen one outcome for everyone. She thought to herself, Death is the only future. Pierre asked again, So you can't find any water source? Noemi thought in silence, I still don't know. I don't know if this is a clue to find a water vein. Is that a threat from the gods? Suddenly Pierre asked, Is there no other way? Noemi looked up and thought,
Kiss me, sir. On Theo's side, he had been sitting in a daze for a while. Theo looked at the kids in front of him and thought, Where is she now? He mumbled, She wouldn't leave the village. Suddenly a voice called out, Hey, mister, do you want to play with us? I heard Pierre say you're very good at soccer. Theo immediately waved his hand. No, I'm very busy. Play by yourselves. I don't have time. The children grumbled. You've been walking around here this whole time, but you say you're busy? This guy has a strange personality. That girl is really pitiful for marrying him. Hearing these words, Theo angrily turned and yelled, You kids! So they frantically laughed and said, Let's run away. Theo was too lazy to pay attention to them and just left. The kids continued to play.
Pierre said, I think your people will try their best to know the future you speak of, but not here. In Slan, you were just an ordinary citizen, and there are laws that need to be respected. Noemi still tried to persuade him, but that's the only way. Pierre asked again, Is there really no other way? Noemi was about to say something more, but then she suddenly stopped. She bowed her head and replied, I understand. I'll find another way. Seeing Noemi's reaction, Pierre thought to himself, Is she trying to do everything to help the villagers of Slan? Then he remembered the words he'd heard. She is innocent. She has nothing to do with her family. Pierre thought to himself, I don't want to believe that. Then he said, If kissing is truly useful, if you have the courage to do it, then try it on me first.
Noemi thought in silence. She wondered if he was doubting it, because while she could kiss strangers, it certainly wasn't pleasant at all. Thinking this, Noemi pulled Pierre's face closer and shouted, Yes, let's do it. Thank you, Mr. Pierre. At this moment, Pierre panicked and thought to himself, Hey, Noemi said loudly, I'm really sorry. Pierre then realized something was wrong and quickly said, Hey, but Noemi had already placed a kiss on Pierre's lips. He immediately froze, thinking, Oh my God. Visions of Pierre's future gradually appeared in Noemi's mind. She thought to herself, I see it, water. Noemi saw Pierre standing before a clear body of water. She happily thought, there will be water in the future. Suddenly, another image appeared in Noemi's mind. She wondered, is this an even more distant future? Then she saw Theo trying to take an air.
Pierre asked in surprise, What? Noemi stared at Pierre and thought, My future husband and my children? Why do I also see my future in him? But that's not the most important thing right now. After thinking, she said, A cave. There's water in the cave. A moment later, Noemi and Pierre went to Theo. Noemi called out,
Pierre immediately said, You're the one who said your wife is never wrong, Theo. Miss Noemi, if a sacrifice is needed, isn't one person enough? Noemi immediately replied, I'm not sure, but Pierre cut her off. You have to be sure, because I intend to be that sacrifice. Hearing this, Theo gasped.
Pierre felt footsteps and tried to lift his head to see. He thought to himself, No, someone is coming. If I fall asleep, everything will be over. The person walking towards him was none other than Theo. After an unknown period, Pierre groggily woke up. He slowly opened his eyes, looked around for a while, and then wondered.
Seeing Theo's fierce reaction, Pierre could only remain silent. Suddenly, a shrill scream echoed. Ah! The child in front of them, being pulled down by the sand, was trying to yell, Help! Help me! Pierre quickly grabbed the rope in front of him. He rushed towards the boy, who was still screaming, Help! Pierre shouted, Quick!
She would become Olak's wife. At that moment, only one thought was in her mind. Olak, please let me go. I want to live. I don't want to die. After thinking, Noemi replied, I won't do it. Olak, puzzled, asked again, What? Noemi clenched her fists and said, No one can ever get used to death.
Every day I see my own death, and I've never gotten used to it.
On this side, Theo and Pierre were trying their best to pull the child up. Suddenly, seeing Noemi run past, he widened his eyes in surprise. Without waiting for him to say anything, Noemi ran to the end of the rope, then plunged straight into the quicksand. She swam towards the child and shouted, "Let me hold them, pull." As she spoke, she lifted the child. With the combined effort of all three, the child was finally saved. As it ran towards its mother, it burst into...
A second later, he caught her hand. They embraced each other. Noemi whispered, "Theo." Olak gnashed his teeth in anger. "How dare you interfere with my work? Who is that man? He made you escape from the temple and even sacrificed himself for you. He's just a human living a life I wrote for him. Enough. Give up." Noemi looked down, then wondered, "Give up? I will never."
Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, "We did it." At the same time, she thought to herself, Olak was wrong. We found water without anyone having to die. The future he envisioned isn't the only possibility. Humans aren't God's puppets, and I don't have to live as a sacrifice. Thinking of this, she burst into loud sobs again, leaving Theo, who was standing beside her, at a...
While Theo was watching her, Pierre suddenly approached him. What an amazing woman. She could make Theo Fidgard jump into that pile of sand after her. I've never seen you so reckless. Theo sighed in response. That's because I know I won't die there. Pierre asked in surprise. What? Does she also see that in the future? Theo thought in silence. She's the only reason I do something so crazy. So this is what it feels like to get it, a truly warm feeling. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, and the woman immediately turned her head and said, "Ah, here you are. We've been expecting you. Haha, enjoy yourselves. We're off to see the water now." Then only Theo and Noemi were left in an awkward silence. He suddenly cleared his throat. I want to talk." And coincidentally, Noemi uttered the same sentence. With that said, the two smiled at each other again, and a beautiful rainbow also appeared in the sky. Looking at the pile of items in front of them, Noemi asked bewildered, "Are all these for us?" Pierre explained helplessly, "I had a hard time stopping them from bringing the entire palm tree up there." Theo, standing to one side, asked in surprise, "You want us to take all of this?" Pierre replied cheerfully. Pierre smiled cheerfully. "Haha, it's fine. I have plenty of time." Then the three of them walked forward one after another. After walking for a while, Noemi suddenly covered her mouth and yawned. "Foop!" Pierre joked, "Yeah, that's great, except for the snakes." Hearing that, Theo immediately cried out, "Snakes?" Pierre quickly reassured her, "But don't worry, those demon snakes are no match for me. I can hear them slithering from 10 ekar." Theo quickly turned his back and said, "You don't need to explain. I'm going to check the water." Pierre immediately chimed in, "Then let's go together." After hearing this, Theo turned his head to look at Pierre and emphasized, "No." Seeing that fierce glare, Pierre quickly reminded her, "The person you should apologize to is Theo, not me, both for the kiss and for keeping it a secret." Noemi hesitated. Should I tell him it was because of the prophecy? Pierre scratched its head and said, "Even if you tell him he—" Across the way, Theo was leaning against the bank. Seeing this, Noemi felt a little embarrassed. Her face slowly flushed red. Noemi instinctively called out, "Theo, there you are." Theo frantically turned around. "What? Stay there. Don't come here." Noemi immediately stopped. Pierre was currently sitting by the fire, grilling food. Suddenly, he sighed. Pierre wondered to himself, how could a woman who could give up everything ask such a question now? He recalled Naomi's earlier words, "Do Theo and I love each other?" Thinking this, Pierre mumbled.
Noemi closed her eyes tightly in confusion. Just as their lips were about to touch, Noemi quickly turned her face away. A hint of disappointment flickered across Theo's face. He sadly asked, "Is something wrong? Don't you want to do that with me anymore?" Theo, upon hearing, immediately shrieked, "What? At night?" Everywhere in the temple was as quiet as usual. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, and Enzo slowly walked down the temple corridor. Enzo suddenly stopped in front of a box. "Let's take advantage of this situation and find the saintess's whereabouts. I don't think that's a bad idea. What if we send letters to the surrounding kingdoms in your name? A merchant has kidnapped our—" "I will include my family and Olak in it." The next morning, Theo, Pierre, and Noemi were trudging across the ground. Noemi walked steadily, looking towards Theo. She secretly worried, thinking she might— Pierre pointed at the camel's leg and shouted, "That's my village's tradition." But Majid replied, "What a coincidence. It's just like my village too." Haha. Pierre angrily retorted, "And the—" On the other side, Pierre continued his verbal battle. Once again, Pierre loudly asserted, "I'm telling you they're mine." Majid's calm voice spoke up, "You're quite stubborn." He continued to ask, "Where are you going?" Majid cheerfully replied, "I'm on my way to the capital. I'm a merchant, as you can see." Suddenly, the man on horseback reminded them, "All three of you." The man below immediately— Pierre honestly replied, "I've been a knight for 10 years, and it's been 2 years since I returned home." Upon hearing this, Majid said, "You must have a lot of old scars." "A lot has changed now." Pierre loudly questioned, "Thief?" But Majid replied, "Your savior, rather." "Oh, this is where everyone will sleep." He generously announced, "Please come in, this is my home." Meanwhile, Majid continued with her introductions, and the poor man in front of her was the village chief. Moments later, a voice asked, "Which one do you like?"
Noemi looked. You don't have to be so polite with us. The lady started digging for information. How long have you two known each other? Are you just starting a relationship or has it been a while? Naomi was incredibly flustered at this point. We're married.
And the two of them, Noemi involuntarily imagined steamy scenes of herself and Theo. At the same time, the other woman's whisper continued. During that time, it would feel like stripping. Do you understand? Is that what you two did? After hearing these words, Noemi felt flushed and utterly flustered.
Noemi was blushing and trembling, overwhelmed by the advice. The ladies covered their mouths and whispered, "Did you hear that? Wow, he just said her bed." The orange-haired woman patted Noemi's back, urging her, "What do you—"
Pierre, and then Theo will, after you, and then both of you. Pierre, you're just making up for what you didn't do last time. Recalling those words, Noemi's head felt like it was steaming. She quickly composed herself and suddenly glanced towards Theo.
Theo suddenly stepped forward and handed her a container of items. That's good then. Here, take it. Noemi asked in surprise, "What is this?" Theo warmly explained, "More comfortable clothes and gloves. I thought you might need them at night."
Theo stood behind her and spoke up. That's wrong. This is how it should be. Noemi slowly turned to look at him. Seeing this, Theo immediately asked, "Did you sleep well last night?" Noemi quickly spun back around and nodded.
Theo turned his head to one side and said, "We only need to convince one person, their leader. I've observed them, and it seems that woman is the decision-maker. Yesterday afternoon, Theo coincidentally discovered Majid was trying—"
Pierre let out an exasperated sigh. I hate being single. Immediately, Theo gave Pierre a jab. Then you should flirt with her to your heart's content instead of kissing other people's wives. Who knows, maybe you'll find a wife.
Theo grabbed Cappy's shoulders, then slowly leaned in closer. Then Theo pressed his cheek against Cappy's. Standing afar, Noemi witnessed everything, but she misunderstood.
Seeing this, Cappy immediately remembered that she looked exactly like her pet, Cappy's pet. It seemed like teasing her was a lot of fun, huh? Noemi, seeing that she was being watched—
I've never felt this way before. It's so difficult, Sir Pierre. Upon hearing this, Pierre thought, I'm starting to regret joining this search. He awkwardly scratched.
Cappy picked up the blindfold and said, "Here." Cappy suddenly spoke, "It's right here." At the same time, a gust of wind. Next, he subtly glanced towards Noemi. Theo secretly wished in his heart, maybe we should run away and live somewhere together. Forget the Iron Crown, forget her family too, and just be free.
Seeing this, Joanna explained that if something is impure, it is dirty. If you are not good, then you are evil, and it teaches us that we should not look at the world that way. As long as I have the Iron Crown—
Well, isn't this the crown you're looking for? Oh, right, there's something I should show you. This is the current state of your precious treasure. Theo shrieked in panic. What do you—
All you gave me was this piece of iron. You are a god who cannot win a woman's heart, and now you're trying to separate us with these tricks? Olak's eyebrows twitched slightly.
Seeing this, Enzo immediately spoke up. "Welcome, Lord Olak." The flowers continued to wither. A piece of Olak's shoulder broke off. It immediately began to recover. Olak frowned, muttering, "That wretched merchant, how dare he?"
I assume that's when your sister will regain her senses and return to me, for that is how her power will become mine. Until then, don't be lazy and continue to bring me flowers." Meanwhile, Theo walked.
Theo felt it and was surprised. Huh? A second later, the fragment vibrated even more intensely. It pulled Theo closer and then bumped into Noemi. The distance between them was now very close. Noemi's hand quickly rested on—
Hearing those words, Pierre smiled, finding it a bit cute. Shouldn't I find someone myself? Suddenly, Pierre's mouth was covered. Theo, glancing around, asked, "Noemi smittent and—"
Whatever I choose, I don't want to live with that kind of regret. And this isn't a choice I can make alone. Naomi might not consider me enough.
Upon hearing that, Pierre smiled and excitedly declared, "It's finally time. I'll do my best."
At the Fogus family mansion, a man anxiously shouted, "What do I do now? Olak is starting to act."
I believe the path I have chosen will ultimately lead to the stability of our family and prove that the holders of the Fidgar family—
Later, Pierre cheerfully said, "Theo, come here and try one." Upon hearing this, Theo immediately worried, "If we keep going like this, we'll easily get lost, you'll see." In a hidden corner, a hooded figure saw them and—
At that moment, he also leaned close and pressed against her like that. Recalling this, Noemi's heart inexplicably beat faster. Suddenly, Cappy appeared beside them and asked, "Why do you two never do things like that?"
Seeing her not react, Cappy looked thoughtful for a few seconds. Then he slowly leaned close to Noemi's ear and whispered, "You saw him too, didn't you? The one who's been following us
But I never thought it was because she was a prophet, moreover belonging to the Olak religion." The believer, hearing this, looked up and tremblingly said, "Seize the saintess." Immediately, Cappy stomped hard on his back.
I think the priests ordered them to chase us. Before they knew it, a crowd of cultists had surrounded the four. Theo quickly instructed, "Stand behind me." On the other side, the cultist from earlier stood up and cursed, "You bitch, how dare you? Kill everyone except the saintess." Suddenly, a spear flew straight into his head, finishing him off. Both Theo and Noemi were astonished by the situation before them. The remaining cultists, seeing this, panicked. Who was that? No sooner had they asked than a coil of rope was thrown out. The cultist who had just spoken out was caught and cried out, "Ugh!"
Then a group of people on horseback quickly rode in, overwhelming the cultists. To one side, the tightly bound cultist fearfully looked up. Aris. Aris sighed softly. It seems if we had arrived a little later, our reward would have been taken, wouldn't it? She turned her head to look at the burly man and called out, Master. The surrounding atmosphere seemed to freeze. Someone thought to themselves. Clearly.
That mark. The surrounding people stared at Eris. More precisely, they were intently looking at the tattoos on his body. Only then did they look up at his face, and then they began to murmur. Those are criminals. The criminals have appeared. They pushed each other, cried out in fear, and fled. Seeing this, Prome twirled the noose again. That's right, all of you, get out of here quickly. She smiled, then looked towards Noemi and said, so as not to interfere with my hunt. With that, Prome spurred her horse forward. As she neared Noemi and Theo, she began to reach out. A second later, Noemi was snatched onto Prome's horse. Theo was stunned for a moment, then cried out loudly, Noemi! Noemi also called out in panic, Theo, Theo! Before he could react, a noose was slipped around his neck. Then Theo was dragged to the ground, crying out in pain, Ugh! Despite this, he still shouted, V, go after Noemi! V quickly grabbed the nearby reins, hastily climbed onto a horse, and chased after Prome while shouting loudly, Hey!
Seeing she had no intention of stopping, Pierre raised his spear and shouted, Hia! Prome turned her head, a smug smile playing on her lips, then hugged Noemi, making her cry out, Ah! Pierre froze at the sight. Seeing this, Noemi shouted loudly, I'm fine, throw it! Pierre gritted his teeth, silently cursing, Damn it! Then he quickly urged his horse forward. Once he was abreast of Prome, Pierre swung his spear to thrust. She quickly parried, and the two fought while riding straight ahead. As Pierre's spear slipped past Prome's, Pierre suddenly paused, his eyes fixed on her hand as he thought, that scar. Seizing the opportunity, Prome lifted her leg and kicked his horse hard. The horse accelerated. Pierre lost his balance and cried out, Ugh! Seeing him fall, Noemi anxiously cried out, Pierre! Pierre scrambled to his feet, letting out a grunt. On the other side, Theo was still trying to remove the noose from his neck. Here, he grabbed a piece of rock, quickly cut the rope tightening around his neck, then collapsed, letting out a gasp. Gulp. Suddenly hearing the sound of a weapon, Theo quickly looked up. A second later, a great sword slashed down. Theo quickly retreated, then swiftly sprang to his feet, his eyes warily fixed on Eris. He raised his head, the blade sweeping horizontally. Theo quickly dodged. But at that moment, an object fell from his clothes. As soon as he saw it, Eris's eyes widened. He quickly stepped forward, his sword thrown behind him where it struck the stone ground, sending out a spark. Eris, like a hungry tiger, reached out, clamping Theo's mouth shut, while his other hand quickly reached down to grab the crown fragment. But Theo quickly blocked him, thinking to himself, Are these guys after Noemi and the Iron Crown too? No sooner had he thought this than a hand reached out from behind. A Tysian man grabbed Theo's neck, shouting loudly, We've got him, everyone come help. Theo swallowed hard. Gulp.
Seeing him lose his composure, Theo smirked. Then he spat a mouthful of saliva onto his face. Seeing this, Prome anxiously cried out, Master! Eris slowly stood up. From his old memories, an image along with a familiar voice echoed, Commander, I want to join your army. Pierre thought to himself, could it really be her? Primary used to be a knight, so
Pierre replied decisively, No. Cappy felt confused. What? On the other side,
it was really frustrating. Damn it, I couldn't hear what they were saying. He tried to move closer to them. Suddenly, Noemi's voice spoke up, startling him. It was the language of demons. I had heard it before. It was even used in Olak's.
But what I was most curious about was why they knew you had a part of the relic, the one you're desperately searching for. Hearing this, Theo felt awkward. Noemi had a question. Why would they think you're the keeper of the heirloom?
In the mansion, Hugo was sitting comfortably on his chair, asking, Who is this? Oh, it's Sir Fidgar. Roik immediately bowed his head. Greetings, Lord Hugo. Upon hearing this, Hugo and Roik both recognized the person as Enzo Balan. At the same time, Enzo spoke up. Greetings, Lord Hugo. Hugo gave a faint smile and asked, It seems... In the mansion, the candlelight still flickered. After listening to Enzo's explanation, Hugo frowned in confusion. Are you proposing an alliance between me and Sir Roik? You want him to marry my sister? Enzo slowly explained. Hugo replied, resting his chin on his hand, Are you asking me to sacrifice my sister to save them? You're being overly confident. Hearing that, Enzo immediately tried to convince him. I heard the Fidgar... On the other side, Hugo concluded with satisfaction, Good, you are a selfish priest. What do you want in return? Immediately, Enzo spoke a name, Noemi Bellin. Find my sister and don't hand her over.
Then she fell straight to the ground. Ah! It was then that Noemi finally spoke up and asked, Who said I was a princess? My life isn't easy either, and besides, don't ever touch my husband again.
Just then a hand suddenly grabbed someone's shoulder. Then a heavily bearded man named Eris rushed out shouting loudly, Prome! Seeing this, Noemi anxiously called out, Theo! When his consciousness was transferred to another space, Theo thought in surprise, What is this? Where am I? Where is Noemi?
Suddenly, he saw a black-haired woman.
From within the sandstorm, a familiar sound echoed, surprising Theo. He saw Enzo carrying something toward him. Theo's eyes widened as he wondered, is that...
Pierre looked up at the bird flying back. After it landed, he let out a soft chuckle. Aha, I knew you would answer. Pierre opened the letter.
Before the words were out, a priest burst through the door, shouting, "Forgive me, there's urgent news." An angry priest asked, "Can't you see we're in a meeting?" The other priest stammered, "This cannot wait."
I wish you would at least tell me something, but if you keep saying you don't know, how am I supposed to deal with this situation? Didn't we agree to be together so that...
Theo paused. Olak's words suddenly rang in his head. "Fine, if you don't believe me, then just do as you wish. You'll choose the Iron Crown anyway." Pierre was wading through the sandstorm when a voice suddenly rang out. "Your handwriting is still terrible, isn't it?" Though I didn't want to, I still recognized it. Pierre called out.
As a result, a knight clicked his tongue. Tss, you filthy criminal. Having no other choice, Prome could only kneel down and plead. Commander, please, I will guard the arrows, or even be a slave. If you accept me, I will do anything. Hearing her words, the commander immediately flashed a cunning smile. Very good. It seems you finally know your place. Take these back to the barracks before sunset. Seeing the pile of spears thrown down, Prome quickly said loudly, thank you, Commander." Then she bent down and picked up each spear. At this moment, Pierre suddenly helped her pick up a spear. As he handed it to her, he said, 5 years. If you can survive for 5 years, even the Taisayan tribe can be granted citizenship. Then you won't need to be a slave. Prome was stunned, thinking, he didn't call me a criminal. She unconsciously tightened her grip on the spear in her hand. I joined with great difficulty, but no one treated me like their comrade. A knight stepped on her hand and laughed loudly. Ha ha, is this an injury from today's battle? You've rested enough, now get to work. Another one said, clean this area and put it next to my bed in the barracks. As they left, the two of them loudly discussed, a criminal dreaming of becoming a knight? Letting her do chores is already good enough. Everyone treated me very harshly.
Suddenly, a voice rang out. Who told you to do that? Prome looked up, seeing Pierre standing in front of her, everyone but him. She quickly stood up and said, it's nothing. Hello, congratulations on your promotion to commander. I thought you were the one who would grant me citizenship, but when I was 15, you disappeared and someone else took your place. On his first day as commander, I was fired without any explanation. Back in the present, Prome angrily asked, do you know what it feels like when your last hope is crushed? There's nothing more cruel than giving someone false hope. Pierre said, I don't know. At that time, I had an urgent matter that required me to return to my homeland. His hand was pushed away. Prome coldly said, so don't try to make those disgusting memories better than they are now. Just tell me what you want. In the detention tent, Noemi said, let's end this sham marriage. Theo lowered his voice and advised, don't say such things so easily. I've never said I wanted to cancel anything, and I never will. Noemi asked again, how can I believe you? You always do everything alone. After a moment of silence,
Theo said seriously, if you can't believe what I say, then believe in my future. You always trust the illusions you see through me more than anything I say anyway. So, Noemi, kiss me. Noemi swallowed silently. Then she bowed her head and said, when I was kidnapped, I also saw a future where I was Olak's prisoner again. I thought I had gone too far, but I still returned to where I started. No matter how much I run or try to escape it, I can't. Is it hopeless for me? As she spoke, tears suddenly fell. Noemi burst into sobs and said, I'm so scared. I'm really scared, Theo. Hearing her say that, Theo remembered Olak's words. You will soon be blinded by your desire for your iron crown, and eventually my wife will return to me. He thought to himself, everything is happening just as he said. That must be why Noemi thinks she has changed. Damn it, why did I drag her into this mess? Theo clenched his fist, then spoke. It's all my fault. Do you remember the day I returned to the village injured? I think the person I met that day was Olak. I never believed in God before, but the person I saw wasn't human. He presented a piece of the iron crown I was looking for right before me, and even though I knew it was a trick, I still fell for it. But when I saw your face after returning, I regretted it immediately. Things didn't go according to my initial plan. Everything got messed up. Everything that's happening to us right now is my fault. I'm truly sorry. Noemi looked up at him, and after a few seconds, she said, Olak always knows what people fear most.
He gave him that fragment of the Iron Crown because he knew that once he had it, he wouldn't want to be with me anymore. He knew my greatest fear was that he would no longer be with me. Theo paused again. He recalled his own words when he spoke to Pierre. Honestly, I don't even know what I truly want right now. I want this heirloom or a life with her, but one thing I'm sure of is, this is the first time in my life I've wanted to protect someone. If we choose each other, I don't want it to be because of circumstances, but because we truly want it. Then Theo spoke up, his voice raised. I feel the same way. I'm afraid my decision will only lead to regret, but I can only think of one thing right now. No matter which path I choose, I want to be with you. After a brief pause, Theo continued, Noemi, we can still change the terrible future you've seen.
Let's find a way for us to stay together. Noemi silently considered. To be together. Then she extended her hand. As their hands met, both their heartbeats suddenly quickened.
Theo suddenly leaned in, and then the two began to kiss. When Theo tried to pull away, Noemi leaned in and kissed him again. Then she said, "Since the day I met you, I've always been able to find a way to survive, thanks to you. If you agree, I want us to continue like this." Theo's face immediately turned red, his eyes wide with surprise. Noemi, also embarrassed, looked down and said, "Oh, I wasn't kissing you to see the future." As soon as she finished speaking, both their faces turned as red as tomatoes. Theo cleared his throat to ease the awkwardness. Noemi suddenly looked up and said, "By the way, do you know the Devil's Song?" Theo asked doubtfully, "What? The Devil's?" Noemi explained, "The Devil's Song. I didn't intentionally listen to it, but I saw it in the future. I sang it in front of their leader. A snake and a mongoose fought, and the snake killed the mongoose."
But the snake couldn't free itself from the enemy's teeth. The mongoose's fangs were lodged in the snake's neck. That's why I wonder, how do you know this song too? According to Susat, it's a song his aunt used to sing. 12 years ago, in the temple, a young priest was desperately pleading, "Please forgive me. I never intended to defile God. That song unconsciously ran through my head. That's why when I was waiting for early morning prayers, I unconsciously started singing it." Before him, a senior priest frowned. "Unconsciously? Is it a melody that someone who doesn't know it can still sing? You are a follower of God, yet a devil's song comes from your mouth. Is it because you haven't been properly educated, or has no one taught you its history?" The young priest raised his head and stammered. "Initially, the devil rebelled against our god, Olak, and then created false rumors." The senior priest nodded. "Indeed. So what does that song mean?" The young priest replied. The senior priest growled. "I asked what it means." The young priest bowed his head, his whole body trembling, his face filled with apprehension. "Olak and Eidos fought, and then Olak swallowed Eidos, but Olak couldn't free himself from the enemy's teeth. Eidos's teeth were lodged in Olak's neck. Olak swallowed it, and..." At that moment, Hector, standing on a high platform, said, "There are still those who worship Eidos in some places. They are like rabid monsters. They don't even hesitate to commit the gravest sin, loving those of the same sex." Below, the young priest frantically said, "Please have mercy on me." But the senior priest still raised the horsewhip in his hand. Then the young priest's screams, "Ah! Ah!" echoed through the hallway. Seeing this, Hector turned and said, "Annihilate all these sinners."
It is the duty and responsibility of those who serve God. Remember that we can only survive through Olak's generosity. Do you understand, Enzo? He replied coldly, "Yes, father." At the same time, Noemi covered her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. Back in the present, Noemi said, "In that song, Olak is the snake and Mongoose is Eidos. It's a forbidden song. Stand my whole life."
At this point, Theo added, "That song has an ending." Noemi was surprised. "An ending?" Theo nodded. "Yes, it goes like this. Only the devout collect teeth to place them upon the heads of their religion." A long time ago, when he first heard it, Theo had asked in surprise, "What? Can you repeat that, Auntie? I couldn't hear it, Auntie." Joanna had said, "Don't worry about it, just memorize the first part." After hearing him finish singing the ending, Noemi asked, stunned, "There's that part? I only heard the first part." Theo affirmed, "I'm sure. The person who taught me the song told me about it." Noemi said, "This is the first time I've heard about it. Perhaps the priests intentionally didn't teach it."
Theo said seriously, "If that's the case, the person you meet in the future can give you the answer." After a moment, Eris sat opposite Theo. "You want to meet me?" After being untied, Theo rubbed his wrists and said, "I know what you want. You want a place where you can settle down. I have a close friend in this country. If you release us, he can give you a place in Anthena." Eris asked, "Is your friend the king of Slan?" Theo said, "He used to be a royal knight of the palace." Eris asked in a low voice, "You must be talking about the person who came with you, aren't you?" Hearing that, Theo couldn't help but ask in surprise, "You know Pierre?" Eris asked seriously, "The king's discrimination has lasted half a century, but you mean this person can end it all?" Theo replied, "I was able to save my wife thanks to him. He has spent a long time trying to end the ongoing nonsense. But you are planning to support the Olak temple, while they are the ones who created this entire situation. In my experience, they never keep their word." Seeing Eris hesitate slightly, Theo narrowed his eyes and thought, "Good."
It's working. He silently clenched his fist. He recalled Noemi's words in his mind. "I've seen you in the future singing that song in front of the Taisayan people, and then a snake and a mongoose." At this point, Theo spoke. "A snake and a mongoose fought. The snake killed the mongoose, but the snake couldn't free itself from the enemy's teeth. The mongoose's fangs were lodged in the snake's neck. This is a song about our Lord." Theo continued to sing, "But the snake couldn't free itself from the enemy's teeth. The mongoose's fangs were lodged in the snake's neck.
Hearing this, a name immediately appeared in Eris's mind, Joanna. Meanwhile, Theo was still speaking. Finally, the snake swallowed it, and the tooth rolled in the snake's stomach. I'm sure you know this song very well. Eris asked with a trembling voice, "What are you trying to do?" At this moment, Theo was staring at the necklace around his neck. A second later, he sprang up, reaching out his hand, and at the same time, Eris's voice rang out, "Master!" Theo once again recalled Noemi's words. "I've seen you singing that song in front of the Taisean people," and then he had grabbed his necklace. The moment his hand touched the necklace, Theo thought in astonishment, The scene before him suddenly changed. As his consciousness fell into the familiar space, Theo thought to himself, "I'm back here again." He looked up, and before his eyes was still the familiar image, a mongoose fighting a snake. Theo walked towards Eidos, asking, "Are you Eidos?" She replied, "I am his memory." With that, Eidos suddenly raised her hand and pointed in a direction. Theo slowly turned to look, then thought in surprise, "That person, that hair, those eyes, her clothes, I'm sure it's my aunt." Then he called out loudly, "Joanna Fitgar." Joanna remained motionless.
Eidos explained he couldn't speak with memories. In the illusion, Joanna asked if Eidos used this to fight Olak. Is this Eidos' tooth? Beside her was a young heiress who replied, "Yes, that's right. It's the only thing that can harm Olak, and Eidos was once a powerful god." Joanna asked indifferently, "What does that matter now that he's dead?" Eris said, "Even before he died, he protected us from Olak. True power comes from protecting something. That's the meaning of the last line in Eidos' song. The one who wields Eidos' fangs," Eidos continued, "will be granted power to fight against their enemies." After seeing this, Theo immediately turned his head and asked, "What do you hope to achieve by showing me this memory?" Eidos replied, "To collect the fragments and fight against the enemy." Pierre's image reappeared, and Theo thought in astonishment, "It's Pierre and another fragment of the Iron Crown." He turned and asked, "Is that a memory too?" Eidos nodded. He observed that memory fragment again and thought, "This outfit, it seems so recent." Then he suddenly grabbed Eidos' shoulder.
Lewin asked, "Can you show everyone who has the other pieces of the Iron Crown with my memory?" A few minutes earlier in the desert, Pierre was leisurely lying in a tent. Suddenly, the pouch at his side twitched. Pierre's widened. He quickly sat up and took out the pouch. Slowly opening the mouth of the pouch, it revealed a piece of the crown. As soon as Pierre touched it, his consciousness was pulled into Eidos' spatial domain. Pierre looked around, frowned, and said, "Where am I?" He suddenly paused, surprised, and called out, "Theo." At the same time, Theo was also asking Eidos. Pierre called out loudly, "Theo." Theo Fidgar, after calling for a while, thought to himself, "He's not responding, maybe he can't hear me." Simultaneously, Theo was asking Eidos, "You mean you can show Pierre a part of my memory, right?" She replied, "Yes, because the Iron Crown pieces are connected." Theo urgently said, "Then please show Pierre the memory of this moment." Eidos did not reply, a slight gleam in her eyes. Pierre immediately saw a wisp of black smoke appear before him. In a blink, the black smoke dissipated, and an illusion suddenly appeared before him. This was followed by Eris's voice. "Your heirloom was broken into 3 pieces a long time ago. We will hand you over to the Bellin family and receive the last piece of the Iron Crown in return." Eidos suddenly appeared and continued, "Collect the fragments and fight against the enemy."
Pierre wondered, what were those images just now? In the illusion, Theo suddenly spoke loudly, "Pierre, if you can hear me, come meet me at the Black Rock Range." Pierre startled. "Ah!" A second later, he woke up. Looking at the crown fragment that had fallen beside him, Pierre thought to himself, "How interesting." Then he smiled and said, "This thing I'm holding seems quite important, doesn't it?" At the same time, Theo also woke up. Behind him, an angry voice rang out, "Separate him from the master." Theo cried out, "Ah!" 2 burly men beside him immediately shouted, "Stay still! How dare you lay a hand on the master? I'll chop off your hand." At this moment, Theo suddenly shouted, "You're trying to seize the Iron Crown to fight against Olak, aren't you? Then we share the same goal. We will help you." Aristo leaned forward and asked, "We? Who are you talking about? You and that saintess, or you and that friend? Or perhaps you and Joanna?" Theo thought to himself, "Doesn't he know that my Joanna has already passed away?" Eris suddenly pulled out a knife and forcefully plunged it into the tabletop next to Theo's hand. Then he said in a low voice, "Every one of you is a traitor and our enemy, yet you dare to use your foul mouth to deceive us. If the Bellin family does not uphold the agreement, I will kill that saintess, and that will be the end of everything."
I'll pretend this conversation never happened. Lock him up. The muscular men with 8-pack abs immediately replied, "Yes, master." After a while, at the hut where Noemi was imprisoned, seeing Theo thrown in, she cried out, "Theo!" One of the men poked his head in and said, "Don't try anything stupid." Noemi anxiously asked, "Are you okay?" Theo replied, "I couldn't negotiate with him, but I've learned something thanks to your prophecy." Noemi was surprised. "What?" Theo jutted his chin towards his chest. "Look." Upon seeing the dagger, Noemi exclaimed in surprise, "Ah, that!" Theo smiled and said, "We'll wait until the guards are distracted, then we'll escape." At the same time, at the shrine, Ryek's voice echoed, "The Faga clan. I have no intention of leaving God's embrace and becoming a heretic. I truly regret the grave mistakes of a member of my clan, and I will regain your trust by fulfilling the sacred duty of bringing back the saintess. Enzo approached, carrying a tray. I bless you with Olak's generosity. Roik looked up, pondering. Enzo Bellin. I don't know what he's planning, but perhaps what he wants is, he secretly recalled Enzo's words. Sir Roik, I want you to use Montemond as a shield after getting engaged to their daughter. Then you will undertake a mission to bring back the saintess and earn the trust of the Olak temple. But there's something else I truly want from you. Seeing him pause, Roik couldn't help but wonder. Yes? Enzo added. During your mission, you will retrieve the fragments of the Iron Crown from the sinners and pretend not to capture Noemi. Back in the present, Enzo said seriously, I approve your request. Roik then thought, going against the Olak temple. In the desert, Pierre hung his luggage on the vehicle and said, Theo appeared in my dream, so there's a place I need to go alone. Cappy asked, Are you changing your destination again? What are you hiding? Pierre replied, I'm not hiding anything. I just want to know what the thieves want, what I should do, and where I should go. Recalling Theo's words in the Edo space, meet me at the Black Rock Range.
Pierre continued, What Theo wants me to do is definitely related to our current situation. To do this for him, I need to go alone. Cappy was silent for a few seconds. Then she softened replied, All right, but once you're done in the capital, we'll continue our journey together, okay? We'll be there for a while too. If you succeed in saving your friend, give them this. Looking at the necklace she offered, Pierre couldn't help but be surprised. Wait, do you really have feelings for Theo? Cappy rolled her eyes and retorted loudly, What nonsense are you talking about? Give this to that white-haired saintess. She'll be able to find me. Don't lose it, okay? I don't want this falling into the wrong hands. Pierre hesitated slightly before asking, Why are you so good to us? You always help us whenever we're in danger. Cappy smiled and replied, At first, I thought it was quite fun, but now I'm used to it, because I know what that feeling is like. Suddenly, old memories resurfaced. When Cappy was little, inside a tent, she heard adults saying, Every place we've settled so far has been terrible. I guess this is what happens when a fool who can't take care of himself becomes a chieftain. No wonder his wife ran away right after giving birth. It seems we're all going to starve to death because of this one idiot. Recalling that, Cappy said again, I know what it feels like to struggle when we all want to protect something. Pierre had just exclaimed, Ah, when Cappy continued, Anyway, safe travels. She mounted her horse, smiling as she said, I don't like waiting long, you know. Pierre smiled and replied, All right, I hope we meet again soon. No sooner had he finished speaking than Cappy urged her horse forward. Hup hup. As her figure faded into the distance, Pierre turned to his horse and said, Shall we go too? Then he whistled, and the bird circling in the sky immediately descended.
Pierre took out a bag, looked into the bird's eyes, and said, It seems you are our last hope. After tying the bag to the bird's leg, Pierre's eyes suddenly drooped, filled with worry as he thought, Be strong, Theo. I'm coming to where you want me to be. At the same time, Theo had just had water splashed on him. The one who splashed the water laughed and said, It's so hot. Enjoy it. We don't want you to get dehydrated. Noemi asked worriedly, Theo, are you okay? Theo whispered back, I'm fine. He thought to himself, I know we'll get a chance, if I can distract them somehow. Not far from there, Prome said to Eris, Master, the day of negotiations with the Olak temple is approaching. We must decide which piece we want to take, the one they have or the one this kid is hiding. A brown-haired man added, What if we split up and pursue both at once? Prome said, Given our current situation, it's too dangerous. We should only choose one and must go together. Just give us the order. Aris listened while deep in thought, then suddenly his eyes widened.
Seeing his pendant float up, Prome was also surprised. Oh, what's wrong with it? The redhead said astonished. It's pointing in a different direction. At this moment, the pendant suddenly began to move incessantly. Prome exclaimed in surprise. It's still moving and constantly changing direction. In the air, Pierre's bird was circling. Beneath it, the crown fragment in the bag was also constantly moving. Prome suddenly asked, Could another fragment be nearby? Theo, startled by this, quickly nudged Noemi with his shoulder. Then he whispered, It's time. At the same time, Eris said, All right, saintess to Olak first, and after we get their fragment, we'll go look for the last one. Bring them. Eris stopped short, his eyes wide with surprise. He angrily asked, They escaped? Prome turned and said, I'll go find them. Eris suddenly grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back. Wait, leave that to us. I want you to find out what that redhead is planning. Prome was astonished. Huh? But now, Eris interrupted. You know him best. If you can't find him, just let me know their location. He took the pendant from his neck, put it on her and instructed. But if the situation is too dangerous, don't pursue them further. We'll meet at the Blackstone Range. The moment she touched the pendant, Ados's voice also echoed in Prome's mind. Receive Ados's blessing. In a magnificent castle, Hugo's voice rang out. Fidgar Hamley
Has abandoned the plan and benefited from our alliance. But I have yet to see any benefit for myself from this three-way cooperation plan. I can't even use their family's assets or army. When Royak was still cooperating, something just felt off. After a moment of no reaction from Enzo, Hugo asked again, Why don't you say something? You said this alliance would help me. Everything has stopped just because one person isn't here, so how can you keep your promise to me? Enzo calmly spoke. The saint does not lie. What you truly want to know isn't how, but when I will bring you benefits. Isn't that right? Hugo thought in silence. He truly hasn't changed at all. Even back then, 3 years ago at the academy, a student said, "Hugo, look over there. That's the son of the famous Bellin family." Hugo looked over curiously, his gaze immediately drawn to Enzo. At this point, the other student added, "Those nobles look like a bunch of maggots swarming around him, probably doing everything they can to beg for his favor. I heard that nowadays people can't even dream of entering politics without support from the Olak church. Perhaps I also need to find a priest to get close to."
Hugo chuckled softly. Only a fool would say that. The other student said, "It's true that the Olak church has grown stronger recently." Hugo looked back in silence, then mused. But he truly is as beautiful as the rumors say. What a pity he's a man. Having said that, he fell silent and looked at Enzo. After a while in the classroom, a priest substituting for the teacher began the lecture. Today we will learn how to interpret doctrine. I want everyone to share their thoughts on Olak Gospel 3:10. Hugo, listening to the lecture, said with annoyance, "Has the principal of this academy lost his mind? How could he ask a priest to come here to teach?" The black-haired student immediately said, "See, I told you, the Bellon family has influence everywhere." Hugo frowned. So this is how they promote themselves and expand their reach? How vulgar.
After the class ended, Hugo packed up his books. Then, walking towards Enos, he said loudly, "The Olak religion is something quite miraculous, isn't it? They say only Olak is allowed to rule over humans, and even if they trample on the king's authority, their followers still praise their god." Enzo spoke up. "I think you've misunderstood the doctrine. The king was also granted his authority by God, so he has power too, right?" Hugo chuckled softly. "Ha, that's when you believe in God. What about someone who doesn't believe, like me?" Enzo said bluntly, "That might be why you don't receive God's protection, and why you're pushed to the back of the line among your brothers." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Hugo's voice deepened. "Only the weak hide behind God's name, rationalizing their shortcomings by saying it's within his domain. Is this the faith you speak of? Go on living in your stubbornness. In the end, I will be the one to change my position, not God." Enzo shook his head and said, "I have no intention of forcing you to believe. I'm just telling you that every country has a king, and God is the one who rules this world. That's not an illusion, but the truth. There are things in this world that cannot be explained by science alone." "I'm very impressed with our conversation. Let's continue next time." With that, he walked past Hugo and left. Hugo frowned, thinking, "That arrogant bastard," and at the same time sneered. What good is a pretty face? Back in the present, Hugo thought to himself, he's still the same, still with that straight-backed posture. Then he spoke, "Are you certain about the existence of God? How can you call yourself a saint? Have you seen him with your own eyes?" Enzo replied seriously, "God's existence. God is always with me." In his memory, Enzo knelt at the feet of Olak's statue and whispered. His soft murmurs echoed throughout the quiet room. "My God, I confess all my sins to you." Recalling Hector's words, they didn't even hesitate to commit the worst sin, loving someone of the same sex. Enzo thought to himself, "God, I have never worshipped the devil, so how could I become like this?" Suddenly, a voice echoed in his head. "I have heard you call me in despair." Olak slowly descended, continuing, "My wife's brother." Having said that, he flashed a radiant smile. Enzo thought in bewilderment, "My wife's brother? How can that be?" A second later, he bowed his head and said, "Greetings, Lord Olak." Olak lifted his foot and slowly stepped forward. "My brother-in-law is praying with pain in his heart, so I am compelled to answer that question. You are right. You are committing a grave sin. If you continue down this path, it would be better for you to worship the devil instead of me. If you find it too difficult to understand, you should constantly ponder it. Why can only a wife be by God's side? Just as the sky has the sun and the moon, this world has men and women. Nature is a combination of these two. If God is a man, then surely his wife should be a woman. That is God's law. Haven't I told you what happens when you dare to defy God? I am referring to men having relations with other men." Enzo immediately recalled the words of the young priest the other day. "I never intended to disgrace God. I just—" But before he could finish, the senior priest swung his horsewhip.
Seeing that he remembered that outcome, Olak immediately said, "Will you choose that path? If you wish, I can let you experience things like that boy." Enzo turned pale with fear, hastily pleaded, "Forgive me, I will obey God." Olak patted his head with satisfaction. "Yes, you should be, my loyal servant." Back in the present, seeing Enzo lost in thought for too long, Hugo called out, "Enzo, what are you thinking about, looking so dazed? So, have you ever seen God?" Enzo pondered for a few seconds, then nodded. "You always ask the obvious, Lord Hugo. Soon the power of the temple will be at your feet."
He lowered his gaze, thinking to himself, every piece in this game will be moved soon. In the evening, when the horses stopped, Noemi looked up at the sky and said, "We've finally reached the Blackstone Range."
Theo thought to himself, they had been riding hard for several days and nights, and Noemi also seemed tired. Suddenly, Noemi turned her head and asked, "We can meet Sir Pierre here, right, Theo?" Theo replied, "That's right, he's on his way here." No sooner had he spoken than a sudden rain poured down from the sky. Theo and Noemi froze for a moment. Noemi then startled and exclaimed, "Oh no, it's raining." Theo added, "We should find shelter." After a while, they both took refuge in a rock cave, while their horse was left out in the rain. Noemi ran her hand through her soaking wet hair, and with downcast eyes thought, "Why couldn't I see these things in the future?" Theo also mused, "It looks like we won't be getting any sleep. We should at least say something." Then he broke the silence. "That song?" Noemi was startled. "Huh?" Theo said, "The devil's song. Do you have to learn it too?" Noemi nodded. "Yes, everyone in the temple has to. As a prophet, I have to learn many more things than just that. I must learn how to speak with the devotees and how to speak with the priests."
She also had to learn how to take good care of her appearance and how to walk softly and speak gently. She also had to learn how to become a bride of God and write a will before marrying him, and more. Hearing this, Theo couldn't help but feel pity and took her hand. Noemi paused, asking doubtfully, "Theo, what's wrong?" Theo replied, "It's just that I have a feeling I'll finally be able to protect you." Outside the cave, the rain was still falling lightly. Their two hands clasped together. Noemi's breathing grew heavier. Suddenly, her eyes flashed. Noemi thought in surprise, "Oh, the future?" She quickly let go of his hand, but Theo swiftly caught it. He said seriously, "I'm not afraid of anything you see. The moment we can be together like this is more important to me. Even if you see a future full of trouble, don't get lost in it." Theo wrapped his strong arm around Noemi's slender waist. Then he added, "I'll save you again no matter what happens." Noemi squeezed Theo's hand tightly, saying firmly, "Me too. I'll also risk everything to save you." She said with a slight hesitation, There's one thing I'm curious about, but I've never asked you. The reason you're looking for your heirloom, because of the woman they mentioned named Joanna." Seeing Theo remain silent, Noemi couldn't help but wonder, would he tell her? Recalling the first day they fled, she had asked then, "How can this object be proof of your worth?"
Theo replied, "You don't need to know about those things yet. This is an adult matter." Noemi continued to think, he always avoids talking about it. But this time Theo answered, "Well, who is she to me? She's the only one in the family I trust, and the only one I always follow to learn from. She values reality more than vanity, and even though my family tried to make her a follower of the Olak church, she never set foot in temple. If a person has principles, they don't need to rely on Olak. She believed in heirlooms, which is why I do too, and after it was stolen, I want to be like her." One day Joanna asked, "Did you refuse that marriage proposal? They told me you behaved very rudely." Theo replied, "That way they'll leave me alone instead of forcing me to find a partner." Joanna sighed, raising her brow. "Why do you keep trying to follow my path? You should experience love like your peers." Theo stated bluntly, "I don't want any advice about love from you, Auntie." Joanna immediately rolled her eyes. "You damn brat, you're a rude boy. You should still give love a chance, at least once." Theo asked indifferently, "Do I look like I have time for love? I'm too busy looking for the heirloom with you, Auntie." Joanna called out seriously, "Theo, the way I didn't believe in Olak and instead pursued heirlooms, it's just like pursuing love. Perhaps you haven't realized it because you're young, but you're like me in so many ways. While that makes me very happy, it also frightens me. The day you come of age, I'll tell you everything about the heir's heirloom." But his aunt, the one who instilled faith in him, eventually passed away on his 18th birthday. Theo bowed his head and said, "I'll never know what she wanted to tell me. The only thing left in my heart is the longing to find the family's treasure again." Feeling his hand trembling, Noemi immediately turned her head to look back. She gently reached out to touch Theo's face. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "I'm so sorry, but this is all I can do for you right now." Theo's eyes reddened slightly. He hugged Noemi's waist tightly and continued, "But now that we're in this situation, I think there are things even more important than the Iron Crown. I realize that only because you are by my side. So now I have a plan to follow my heart." With that, the two slowly drew closer and shared a kiss full of cheesy romance. The kiss lasted a long time, and Noemi's hand began to slide down, slowly unbuttoning Theo's shirt, as she slowly opened her eyes.
A divine light flashed in her eyes, and Noemi immediately closed them, refusing to see the future. At this moment, she could only hear the strong beating of her own heart. The two of them were thus immersed in their own world. A long time later, they slowly pulled apart, their eyes still lingering on each other. Noemi suddenly nestled into Theo's chest and asked, "Things will be difficult for us, won't they?" Theo held her tightly and said seriously, "Probably, but we've made it this far." Noemi smiled. "You're right. We'll get through this," she thought to herself, "because I've already seen it."
I've seen the future we want. In a certain forest, a group of people were moving in single file. Suddenly, a knight shouted, "Everyone, stop." After that, everyone chose a shady spot to rest. At this moment, Roic, while letting his horse drink water, fell into contemplation. "We'll reach our destination in half a day. I thought all I had to do was collect the remaining fragments from the criminals, and then everything would be over. But it seems things are more complicated than I thought." Roic suddenly recalled Enzo's words. "But there's something else I truly want from you, Zer. Your mission is to retrieve the fragments of the Iron Crown from the criminals, and pretend not to capture Noemi." Recalling that made Roic curious. Why would Enzo ask me to do that? Does he have a separate agreement with them? Suddenly, a spear was placed right at Roic's neck. "You."
Pierre seriously demanded, "Give it to me, that jewelry box." A moment later, the resting knights were startled. Seeing Roic panting heavily, they asked worriedly, "Sir Roic, what's wrong?" Roic quickly stepped forward and ordered, "I need to chase a red-haired man with a tattoo on his shoulder, immediately." A knight wondered, "Huh? What happened?" Roic frantically yelled, "The Iron Crown! He stole the Iron Crown!" Elsewhere, Prome's angry voice rang out, "Damn it, this is so annoying. Why does this keep happening? Every time I get a feeling, this thing changes direction. Then when I get to wherever it wants, it changes direction again. What the hell do you want from me? Did the Iron Crown suddenly grow wings or something?" Suddenly, Prome paused. She looked up at the sky and muttered, "Wings? No wonder it moves so fast." The downed bird cried out in fright, "Squawk!" Prome, holding it by its leg, hanging it upside down, said, "He's the only one who uses hawks, so..." Suddenly, she noticed something tied to its leg. Meanwhile, the bird still struggled. "Squawk!" Prome softly muttered, "A piece of paper?" And the bird cried out in distress, "Squawk!" A few minutes later, Prome took the item tied to the bird's leg and released it. She slowly unfolded the piece of paper and read it. The content written on it was as follows, "Keep this. I'll come get it soon. You will always be my teammate, and no one will dare do anything to my subordinate. This is my territory after all." Upon reading this, Prome quickly crumpled the paper and said, "He always does whatever he wants. What are you planning this time?"
This bone protects us, huh? All right, I'll grant you that I understand it, but that can't be the reason to lock us up here. It's no different from a god trying to blind us from the truth. He pointed to the crown's peak, continuing, "Edos isn't that kind of foolish god. The way people explain things like this is the most idiotic thing." The blonde warrior asked, bewildered, "What's he saying?" The black-haired warrior shrugged, "Who knows?" Eris was silent for a few seconds, then flared up, "Even you don't understand what I'm trying to say." The blonde warrior, thrown down, cried out, "Hey, stop it!"
After Eris brought her home and offered her shelter, Joanna ravenously devoured meat with one hand. Her other hand still held a knife to Eris's throat, as he helplessly asked, "Hey, so am I a hostage now? And you know what? Doing this to a villager is one thing, but I'm the chief's son. If you provoke everyone, I'm not sure you'll get out of here safely." Joanna scoffed contemptuously. "They're focused on the crown, not you. They tremble in fear every time they look at it." Not far away, the villagers were whispering. Following closely was a white serpent banner fluttering in the wind. Behind that, an army rumbled forward. Pierre raised the crown shard high and shouted, "Theo!" Behind him, Roic fought in surprise. "Theo?" Theo was also astonished. "Pierre!" It was the other half of the Iron Crown. Again, the sound of horse hooves echoed.
But flying a long distance, its center of gravity slightly shifted downward, striking the chest. Royic's horse cried out in pain, violently throwing Roic high into the air. From behind, people anxiously shouted, "Sir Roic! The criminals have attacked Sir Roic! The negotiations have failed! Prepare for battle!" Meanwhile,
Pierre reached into his shirt and said, "Ah, I've stolen a piece of the Iron Crown from those in the temple." Theo, surprised, "What?" Pierre added, "The villains already have the 2 other pieces. I'll find the rest of the piece."
No sooner had one person been killed than another charged forward. Pierre Premier quickly raised his spear horizontally to block. Then he looked around and thought angrily, "Damn it, they're getting close." By this time, Pierre unconsciously gripped the spear in his hand, saying sternly, "I know it's hard for you to see me as different from them." He raised the spearhead. "However, I swear by everything I have that I..." He lost his balance and fell backward. The knight seized the opportunity, charged forward, and yelled, "You filthy sinners, die!" Suddenly, his eyes widened and his body.
Theo asked suspiciously, "Roic, what are you doing here? Didn't you see the letter I wrote?" Roic interrupted,
Pierre ran closer, then past 2 people and ran away. Roic angrily gripped the sword in his hand and asked loudly, "Why? Why do you always go against the family?" Theo calmly patted his shoulder and said seriously, "You are the ones who keep bringing up the same mistakes made by me and our aunt, even though everything we do is for the family's benefit. Just do what you want to do. You should stop trying to convince me and just keep treating me as a disgrace to the family. If you do that, everyone will be safe, just as you want, and watch your back." Roic quickly turned around to block the attack of the black-clad Tysian. Then he turned his head and shouted, "Theo! Theo forgot!" Under his shouts, Theo ran further and further away. Next to Noemi, Eris was panting, his face covered in blood. His broadsword was stuck in the ground, next to the corpse of the white-haired knight. He slowly raised his head, stared at Noemi and asked,
Do you mean you will give me the future I want? Then tell me, prophet, do you dare swear this in the language of Eidos? If you fail to fulfill your promise, you will die a terrible death, just as Olak killed all the other gods in this world. Noemi thought doubtfully. Other gods? Are they dead? Can gods truly cease to exist? She recalled the words from a book that Enzo once read. God is the sole existence, and he alone lives forever. In the past, when demons brought chaos to the world, God used his omnipotent power to purify all. Humans will die, and God is eternal. God will always care for this world and protect parents, children, and grandchildren forever. We will always be at peace. Then she wondered again, isn't God immortal? At one point on the battlefield, Pierre swung his spear, knocking down a knight. Seeing another knight approaching, he frowned and cursed under his breath. Damn it, these Olak guys just keep coming. Not far away, Theo held a piece of a crown high in his hand and shouted, Pierre, throw it over here. Pierre thought in surprise. Theo? Without hesitation, he tore off the necklace from his neck, then shouted loudly, Theo, catch! As soon as he finished speaking, he threw the piece of the crown. Theo held the piece of the crown high in his hand.
The moment the three pieces touched, the crown automatically reassembled. Theo happily thought, all right. He smiled and said, finally. At the same time, Olak also said, it's finally time for you to reveal your true nature. My beloved wife, witness it with your own eyes. Witness the desire of your arrogant partner. At that moment, the enormous black rock on the other side suddenly cracked open. A small rock fell, and a Tai Sen saw it and cried out in panic, landslide! Theo and Pierre stared in that direction, stunned. Amidst the shouts, everyone watch out! Theo loudly cried out, Noemi! Suddenly, a chain flew over, precisely wrapping around the crown in Theo's hand. A few knights from the temple shouted, I've got the iron crown! Be careful, it belongs to His Holiness the Pope! Theo glanced back and cursed inwardly. Damn it!
In his hand, the tightly chained crown emitted a grating sound of friction. At the same time, Theo suddenly saw Olak's silhouette, who gloated, he can't even get rid of that huge chunk of iron. Is this the future you believe in, my dear wife? You foolish woman, you'll never imagine that the man you rely on so much will ruin everything. But as soon as he finished speaking, Theo let go of the crown. To Olak's disbelief, Theo frantically ran towards the rock, shouting, Noemi! Olak, humiliated, angrily thought, this lowly wretch. As he clenched his fist, the giant rock cracked even further. Eris turned around and cursed, damn it. After only a few steps, his heart suddenly ached. Eris immediately collapsed, his eyes wide, his face contorted in pain as he cried out, ah! Seeing this, Noemi rushed over, pulled Eris up, and helped him walk, saying, let's go, quickly get out of here. Eris nodded slightly, as if agreeing, and the two slowly walked away. After only a few steps, Noemi suddenly stepped on a rock. Ack! After crying out, she fell face first onto the sand. At that moment, a large rock also fell directly onto her spot. Just as danger struck, Theo also arrived. Seeing him embrace her, Noemi was stunned, thinking, Theo. Theo didn't say a word, only held her tightly. A second later, the rock also hit his back, and Theo couldn't help but cry out, ah! Noemi's eyes widened, her face on the verge of tears, thinking, no! A second later, both were buried under the rubble.
Pierre arrived later, only to see a pile of rocks. His eyes reddened as he cried out, Theo! Noemi! Then, sobbing loudly, she cried, don't abandon me. Noemi thought to herself, it's because of you that I realized.
She gritted her teeth, determinedly saying, take me back to that place, so I can kill him.
Impossible. Then his entire body was enveloped by a gust of wind. After a moment, the surrounding debris trembled and flew upwards. Seeing Noemi standing in the midst of a whirlwind, a temple knight exclaimed, this is a sandstorm. On the other side, Noemi raised her hand, and the whirlwind expanded, causing the Tyasaean people to quickly bow down and cry out, oh! Roik also knelt, propping himself with his sword, muttering softly, oof, thinking to himself, can a human truly wield this kind of power? Pierre whispered in disbelief, Theo, I don't know what that is, but is that why you're so desperately pursuing the Iron Crown? In his arms, Theo was unable to react. Among the Tyasaean tribe, each person knelt, murmuring, Eidos has chosen a vessel. Eris was stunned. Eidos. He thought to himself, that is our ancient lord who died at Olak's hands. He imbued his bones with divine power and protected us for a long time. Only those chosen by him can become the master of those bones, and in the hands of Eidos' power, those bones will serve their master until their death, and shall never be placed upon the head of one who intends to harm us. At this, Eris loudly declared in the Tyasaean language, this is his will, serve Eidos and the owner of his bones. All immediately replied, yes, master. At the same time, Olak stood up, his face grim, saying, no, you will not go anywhere. He raised his hand, slowly condensing a spear. This time,
I will kill you forever, Eidos. With that, Olak immediately threw a spear towards Noemi. She still stood there, doing nothing. The The surrounding wind automatically gathered, quickly twisting and shredding the spear. In just a moment, Olak's spear was half shredded. Seeing that scene, he couldn't help but be stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. At this moment, Noemi's wind also slowly twisted together, gradually forming a spear. She raised her hand. The spear immediately shot towards Olak, and at the same time, Aidos's voice rang out again. Olak, how cunning. You are not the First Lord. In the end, you will pay for everything you have done. As soon as he finished speaking, the spear pierced Olak's body. Olak's body began to crack and shatter. He widened his eyes and said, "Damn you, Aidos. Even in death, you still infuriate me. Noemi, you will be my wife. That is God's unalterable prophecy. I will return to teach you this. You will learn that you can never resist God's will." After that, Olak's body also vanished. At the same time, Noemi's eyes returned to normal. Losing consciousness, her body immediately collapsed. Seeing her fall, Pierre urgently called out, "Noemi!" The Taliesin people also called out, "Eidos!" In the realm of consciousness, Eidos posed at the black orb hovering before her, slowly saying, "Nothing in this world is unchangeable. There are things that stubbornly remain still, and humans will resist them." Then she asked, "Noemi, what are you fighting against?" At the shrine, Hector's angry voice rang out, "Not only did you let that brat escape, but you also allowed those criminals to steal the Iron Crown."
Enzo bowed his head and said, "I don't know why, but it seems they're colluding. I'll take responsibility." Hearing that, Hector immediately grabbed the seal on the table. Tossing it aside, he demanded loudly, "He dares bring this mess to me? This time I'll send you, Enzo. Go to Slan at once. You must bring your sister back at all costs, even if it means killing that wretched merchant." Leaving the office, Enzo said, "I'll make sure your family isn't accused of anything, and your brother won't be killed. Don't worry too much. Go home now." Roik hesitated for a moment before saying, I have something else to report, about the Iron Crown." Then he began to recount the events of the Black Rock. Enzo listened, then thought to himself, "Noemi wears the Iron Crown? Impossible. I was certain it belonged to me." In Eidos' space, as Noemi was still in a daze, footsteps suddenly echoed. She opened her eyes and heard Eidos say, You can see the future, while I hold the memories of the past. We are what connects the future and the past. A very long time ago, these two faces could not harmonize. They never existed at the same time.
But cooperating for a short time might be possible. At this point, Eidos was about to reach out for the crown, but after hesitating for a moment, she suddenly changed her mind and withdrew her hand. Then she continued, "Both you and I are weak, so it won't be easy, but if it's you, I'm sure it will be fine. The current phase we need to consolidate is at Slan's capital. You should go there." As soon as she finished speaking, Noemi's consciousness returned to her body. Seeing her sit up, Pierre exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, you're awake." Noemi urgently asked, "Theo? What about Theo? Is he okay?" Pierre led her to another tent. "He's out of critical danger." Noemi rushed in, calling out loudly, "Theo!" Pierre added, "There's no direct danger to his life, but he'll have a hard time waking up." Noemi replied, "I can wait." She thought to herself, "If I touch him, I might be able to see when he'll wake up." Having thought that, Noemi reached out and touched Theo's face. After closing her eyes for a moment, her eyebrows furrowed, and she wondered suspiciously, "What's wrong? Why don't I see anything? Why is that?" Just as she thought this, Noemi suddenly remembered Eidos' words, "Both you and I are weak, so it won't be easy." Meanwhile, Theo was also having a dream. As he was still drowsy, a familiar voice suddenly echoed in his ear. "You visited 11 countries in just 1 year." Theo slowly opened his eyes and glanced to the side. His aunt, Joanna, asked, "Are you out of your mind?" Theo replied frankly, "I want to be like you. I don't want to settle down yet." Joanna rubbed her chin and said, "Hold on. Trying it once wouldn't be bad." Theo had prized. "You? That statement would be more believable if you said you wanted to convert religions." Joanna shook her head. "Not me. I'm talking about you. If you're honest, doesn't a part of you want that too? To settle down at some point in life? To find a place to anchor your wandering ship?" Theo was stunned. "Today, why are you—" Joanna interrupted. "Theo, are you forgetting something?" Theo paused abruptly. After a moment of silent contemplation, he slowly raised his hand and softly said, "Noemi." Joanna smiled and replied, "That's right. She is your anchor. If you realize this, don't lose her. Settling down isn't foolish. It's a decision you make when you want to cherish something for a long time." With that, Theo's consciousness gradually returned to his body. Feeling his hand stir slightly, Noemi, who was still drowsy, also sat up abruptly. She took his hand and called, "Theo." Theo slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Noemi, he squeezed her hand tightly and smiled, saying, "I've got you."
Naomi also smiled and said, "You're awake. I was so worried about what would happen if you didn't." Without waiting for Naomi to finish, Theo pulled her into a hug. Naomi paused for a moment, and a few glistening tears began to well up in her eyes. She buried her face in Theo's chest and sobbed. It seems I can't leave you anymore. You're the only one who makes me this happy. If I lose you forever—" Theo raised a hand and gently wiped away her tears. Naomi continued, "I love you, Theo, afraid of a future without you by my side. I want to be with you forever, even if we can't get married. I still—" At this point, Theo's lips met hers. The two of them shared a sweet moment for a while longer. After they parted, Theo said solemnly, "Me too. No one else can make me feel as happy as you do. So marry me quickly. It's the only choice we have left." After a while, outside the tent, Theo asked, "So what you're saying is that Naomi cannot be separated from the crown?" Eris nodded and said, "Ever since she was chosen by Eidos, she is now one with the crown. It will not want to be far from its chosen master."
Pierre didn't believe it, intending to grab the crown and pull it away. Seeing him trembling all over, Bromi reluctantly asked, "See, I told you it was useless." Eris added, "Unless you smash it into pieces." Pierre sighed, "So you have no choice but to live with it." Theo shook his head. "That's not a bad thing. As long as we keep it, Olak won't be able to do anything to Noemi." At this, he suddenly leaned over and patted her shoulder. "Noemi, we should leave Slan." Eris interjected, "Then Olak will target you again. He will never let her be with the Iron Crown. He will do anything to pursue and separate them, even if he has to completely destroy one of them. So you need to be careful when considering your next steps." Theo asked again, "So where should we go?" Eris replied, "You decide for yourself." Noemi rubbed her chin thoughtfully for a moment. Then she said, "I dreamed of Eidos. I think he wants us to go to the capital. He said there are some things I need to consolidate there." Eris said, "That's also called a prophecy." Theo walked over to Noemi, took her hand and advised, "Just like in Anthera, Slan is really not safe at all. We can get married somewhere else. We don't need to go to a dangerous place. I want you to think about what's best for yourself for once, not for others."
Noemi bowed her head, her voice soft as she spoke. "My divine power is weakening." Theo, surprised, asked, "Why?" He thought to himself, could her power be disappearing? Does this mean there's a problem with her ability to see the future? Noemi replied, "I'm scared, but it also means I'm escaping Olak's influence. That's why I'm sure this is what we have to do." Then she turned, declaring boldly, "I will give all my revelations to the capital of Zan. I will not run away anymore." Under the surprised gazes of Pierre, Promé, and all the Taizanin people, Noemi thought resolutely, "Olak, he held me captive my entire life. The reason I sided with Eidos is because he opposes Olak, and that might be the only way to escape the destiny Olak set for me. I want to cast off all my shackles and have a happy future with Theo." Thinking this, Noemi then said, "But I still don't fully understand what my revelations mean. I don't know what I need to resolve." Aristotle said, "The sacrament. If you can communicate perfectly with Eidos, you will be able to learn what you must do." In a dark space, Olak lay on a white flower garden. He muttered, "I fought in a war, but I failed, and this is all that's left of my body." The petals nearby slowly floated up, then filled in the shattered parts of Olak's body. He sat up abruptly, gritting his teeth and cursing. "Damn Eidos." After bowing his head to look at his hands, Olak then said, "Damn it, you still brought my wife to the capital in the end. That place again, I'm sick of it." Then, in the temple, Olak declared loudly, "My loyal servants, bring your son to Slan and tell him to bring my wife back. While you're at it, I want him to gather all the blooming flowers and offer them to me." Beneath the massive throne, Hector and the priests bowed respectfully.
By the desert, under the flickering campfire light, Noemi said with some hesitation, "But when I was fighting the people at the temple and got injured, Eidos appeared in my subconscious, so perhaps he will do it again?" Eris rummaged through the cloth bag in his hand, taking out a piece of armor and offering it. "Now you are the master of the Iron Crown. You shouldn't wait for him to appear. You must learn how to summon him. You need to make the Iron Crown respond whenever you wish." As he helped Noemi put on each piece of leather armor, Eris continued, "Find a way for it to give you the power you need. That is what you must do as its master. To achieve that, you must first speak with it. You must become one with the Iron Crown. It is an object used to show you memories. If you succeed in communicating with it, you will be able to know all that is past." Noemi thought to herself, "I can only see the future, but now I might be able to see the past." Suddenly, Eris took a bucket of water and poured it down, quickly extinguishing the campfire. He then said, "If you do it wrong, that flame could spread. The power of the Iron Crown is quite potent." Following his advice, Noemi began to experiment. As the Iron Crown hovered above her palm, Noemi suddenly felt something, muttering softly, Then she raised her other arm, and within the crown, the wind gradually grew stronger.
Gradually, it formed a whirlwind that shot straight up into the sky. Seeing Theo about to run over, Eris quickly raised a hand to stop him and said, "This is something she has to go through, so she must continue." Theo said worriedly, "But the wind is too strong. Will she really be okay?" Amidst the wind, Noemi called out in a low voice, Eidos, answer me, if you can hear me." The iron crown suddenly erupted into a whirlwind, and Noemi was immediately blown away. As Eris caught the crown, Theo rushed out shouting, "Noemi!" Just as Noemi was about to hit the ground, he managed to catch her in his arms. "Ah!" Noemi sat up and asked, "Theo, are you okay?" Theo groaned and gritted his teeth. This power doesn't seem to be something humans can handle. What if Noemi gets hurt? Eris shrugged. There's nothing we can do about that. Then he held out the crown. Again. That evening, seeing Noemi covered in injuries, Theo said irritably, "Coming to the capital was your wish, and I respect that, but I don't want you getting involved with or doing anything with the crown."
No matter what Eidos wants, your safety is my top priority. You've decided to be free, so please stay away from dangerous things. Noemi silently walked past him. Theo paused for a moment. Then he quickly followed, continuing to advise. Or, if possible, you could wait until Eidos appears. If he's waiting for something, he might get frustrated and come looking for us first. Seeing Noemi stop, Theo thought she was moved, so he added, "While we wait, we could go to the beach and relax." At this, Noemi finally spoke. "I want to do something before my power weakens. After seeing a beautiful and safe future, I thought the situation was very simple." She silently turned, her eyes full of anxiety as she said, "But I can't see it anymore, Theo. I can't see anything at all. I've had the power of God until now, but the only thing I know how to do is run away. That's why I need to do this. I need to connect with the crown." She clenched her fists, whispering helplessly, I never thought I'd be more afraid of leaving Olak's garden than being in it. Without my divine power, I'm just a human who can't do anything, yet I'm aware of so much." At this, Noemi couldn't hold back her tears. She sobbed, "I'm so scared. I don't want the future I've seen until now to disappear."
"Including my happy future with you," Theo said seriously. "Noemi, I want to tell you this. First, I'm sorry. You're already so worried, and I'm only making it worse. But you might think you're following a future that already exists, but that's not the case. You and I are the ones creating our future right at this moment. There are many paths before you, and you chose the current path to have today. Look at me. I once had a lot of animosity towards the Bellin family, but now I love you. Your choices don't just shape your life, they also change mine. What has been gained from this process won't easily disappear." Hearing this, Noemi immediately rushed forward and hugged Theo tightly. She said, "I always worry that everything will leave me. How can people control those emotions, Theo?" Theo gently stroked her hair and replied, "They always try to stay calm until the day they die. Welcome to the world of an ordinary person." After that, the two looked at each other with eyes full of affection.
Just as the meal was about to be served, Eris's voice suddenly rang out. "Ahem?" As he and Noemi turned to look, he said very casually, "Training will continue tomorrow, at the same time as today." Meanwhile, at Hugo's mansion, voices could be heard. "Who else should we invite? Do you prefer ivory or light beige for the invitations? And what about the amount of silk fabric we'll hang in the hallway? Could you choose the flowers we'll use to decorate the bridal chamber? As for the dress Lady Cecilia will wear..." Hugo frowned, muttering to himself, "Damn it, I should have gone with them." Recalling a few days prior, when he heard Enzo was being dispatched, Hugo immediately asked, "Are you going to Slan?" Enzo calmly replied, "We are planning to go to their kingdom and meet the king." Hugo stood up and said, "If a mere priest wishes to participate in interstate negotiations, I think you should have a royal accompanying you. I will personally accompany you." Enzo coldly refused. "There's no need. You have many duties here. If you wish for the country to prosper more, you should remain here and complete what you must." Back in the present, Hugo suppressed his anger, thinking, "I know I need to marry to maintain this alliance, but I can't believe there's so much to do for such a seemingly minor wedding." Then he raised his head, let out a breath, and said, "Invite all guests, including their distant relatives. Use the first type of silk. Use Cecilia's birth flower, magnolia. As for the dress, bring Cecilia here, because her opinion on this matter is very important."
At the royal palace, a lady was searching everywhere. Miss Cecilia! Oh dear, she still needs to try on her dress. Where could she have gone?" Not far from there, the servants were also bustling, calling out, "Miss!" Meanwhile, outside the wall, Cecilia was climbing the wall and muttering, "A marriage of convenience. Who am I? A mere commodity. To trade me away just because it benefits my brother? I won't allow it. I'll escape to the border. Let him find a new bride. Force me to be someone's wife? I still want to travel to many places." Suddenly, footsteps echoed, catching her attention. When Cecilia turned, she saw Royak. She paused for a moment, her eyes fixed on Royak's face, thinking to herself, "That handsome man." Suddenly, she lost her grip, and Cecilia cried out in alarm. "Ah!" Royak was also startled when Cecilia fell. "Oh!" He quickly rushed over and scooped her up. Their faces were almost touching. Cecilia unconsciously swallowed a gulp of saliva. Gulp. A second later, she immediately jumped down and pushed him away. Royak also looked away a bit awkwardly and said, "I'm sorry." Cecilia frowned and questioned, "Who are you? How did you get in here? This area is only for royalty." Royak asked back, "Then why did you climb over the wall of the royal area?" Cecilia replied, "That's because this is my home. I can do whatever I want."
Royak was stunned. "You're home? Hello, young lady. I am Royak Fidgar." Hearing his introduction, Cecilia asked in confusion, "Fidgar? Wait, wasn't your family excommunicated by the Olak church?" Royak awkwardly turned his face away. "Yes." Cecilia exclaimed again, "Wow!" Then she thought to herself, "So this is my fiancé. He's tall and looks very strong." She unconsciously blurted out, "And handsome, too." Royak didn't hear clearly and asked again, "Huh?" Cecilia swept back her golden hair and asked seriously, "So you've come to see me?" In her heart, she thought, "I will definitely marry him." Meanwhile, Noemi was still practicing telepathic communication with Eidos. She raised both hands high, her eyes tightly shut to focus on sensing. When she opened her eyes, Theo's voice echoed in her mind. "Your choices not only shape your life, but also change me. What is gained from this process will not easily disappear." So Noemi became even more determined, thinking, "I can do it, for everyone."
Having finished her thoughts, she refocused on communicating with the crown in her hand. A second later, a whirlwind shot up into the sky, but this time Noemi wasn't thrown back, which made her exclaim in surprise, "Ha!" Theo raised a hand to shield his eyes from the wind and looked over, squinting as he thought, "Who is that?" At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind Noemi. It was a young man with black hair and golden eyes, who looked very much like Olak. Eris, from outside, asked loudly, "You see it, don't you? What you're seeing is the past trapped within the Iron Aeon." Noemi's eyes widened as she thought, "I see it, but it's not just the past. It's the past, present, and future. I can see everything. I feel it's different from just being able to see the future. I can't bear it." At this thought, she collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted. Theo rushed over, calling, "Noemi! Noemi!" He worriedly picked her up. Eris also walked over and said, "She's just fainted. The first attempt was successful. Theo interrupted, "No, don't make her do this anymore." In the dark space of consciousness, Eidos slowly walked over and said, "You did it."
"Now it's much easier for us to meet." Noemi paused for a moment, then rushed to Eidos' side and said, "Now I can sense every point in time. Just now there was someone standing behind me. So that was—" Noemi asked incredulously, "Was that you?" Eidos nodded and replied seriously, "That was me before I became a memory." Noemi said, "Ah, so that was you when you were alive. So now?" Eidos replied, "The person you see now is someone with a name, with beliefs, but whose home has been stolen. The person I wish to see is not this child. I was once more complete and taller. To regain my true form, this child's body must be freed from the shame of being a sinner. In the palace in the capital city of Slan, there is a key to liberation. Please help me find it." Inside the tent, a candle was lit. Theo sat below, gently wiping Noemi's face. In silence, his eyes drooped, filled with sorrow. At this moment, the tent flap was pushed open. Aris, carrying a bowl, stopped and asked, "May I come in for a moment?" Theo nodded, then turned back to continue looking at Noemi. Aris offered the bowl of medicine. "This is traditional Chinese medicine. It will help her recover faster."
After Theo took the bowl of medicine, the atmosphere in the tent was momentarily a bit awkward. After a few seconds, Theo spoke. "My aunt, Joanna Fidgar, does she know about the power of the Iron Crown?" Eris lowered his gaze slightly. Joanna wanted to use its power to reconcile the differences between Taisean and Slan, making her an arbitrator between the two nations. But during the brief moment of peace that had just been agreed upon, she stole the Iron Crown and fled. Although I'm not entirely sure, I think she did it to use its power elsewhere, didn't she? After hearing him speak, Theo immediately gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath. This damn old woman. If she knew, she should have taught me about this power sooner. He looked at Noemi for a moment longer, then said apologetically, "I don't know what my aunt intended to do with this Iron Crown, and I don't want to know. To me right now, a dead person is not as important as Noemi." Eris silently repeated his words, "Not as important as Noemi." Theo added, "So if you intend to make Noemi do anything that benefits you—" Suddenly Noemi cried out, "Dream! Dream!" Theo immediately turned his head to look back and asked anxiously, "Noemi, you're awake. Do you feel any pain anywhere?" When Noemi looked over, the shadow of Eidos reappeared behind Theo.
Outside the tent, amidst the bustling atmosphere, people gathered talking to each other, oblivious to a stranger who had just appeared. Noemi asked, "So only we can see her, right?" Fearing Theo wouldn't understand, she immediately clarified, "Eidos." Theo replied, "I think so." Noemi added, "He said it would be easier for us to meet him from now on. I guess this is what he meant." On the other side, Eidos was looking at Eris. After a moment, she smiled, then turned and nodded at Theo and Noemi. Having done that, Eidos was about to open her mouth to say something, but could only utter an "ah." She touched her neck, then slowly disappeared into the crowd. Seeing this, Theo said, "It will be easier for us to meet him, but I think there is still something we need to overcome to be able to communicate." In the evening, inside a tent, Noemi bowed her head, closing her eyes and thought,
In her hand, the iron crown was emitting a dazzling light, and 2 wisps of wind slowly swirled around her arm. Suddenly, Noemi opened her eyes wide. The wind gradually gathered behind her, forming the silhouette of Eidos. Theo, standing beside her, thought with a hint of jealousy, but does every communication have to be this close? Do they really have to do it like this? When a mark appeared on Noemi's forehead, Eris quickly said, "Stop, that's enough for today, I think. If you keep going, it will be too much for you." Noemi quickly stopped, but her body, exhausted, still fell backward. Theo quickly ran to help her up. Noemi looked at him as if she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. After returning to the tent, Theo brought her a bowl of medicine. Noemi was still deep in thought. "I feel something on my forehead." Seeing her distracted, Theo asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Noemi replied, "Yes, I can manage. I feel the power of the Iron Crown better than before. I think I'm making progress."
It felt like Eidos was holding her closer and tighter still. Theo's face darkened. His jealousy flared up again, more intensely. Noemi naively replied, "Yes, what do you think will happen next?" Theo replied, "How should I know?" Noemi immediately ran out, saying, "Then I'll go ask Eris." With Theo left alone in the room, he grew even angrier, exclaiming, "Ugh." While working in the kitchen, his eyes still burned with murderous intent, and even closer, Eidos. Theo raised the axe in his hand and brought it down on the log on the chopping block, grinding his teeth as he thought, "That damn bastard." Seeing this, Brome asked, "What's wrong with him?"
Pierre burst out laughing and replied, "This guy, look what he's doing to keep his wife warm. He's madly in love, I told you so." Prome helplessly whispered, "I don't think this is the right time to do that." Just then, Pierre suddenly poked Theo's back and called out, "Hey, are you doing all this for your wife? Noemi must feel very—" When he saw Theo's expression, Pierre immediately stopped. Gulp? What's with that look?" "Theo," Prome sighed, thinking, "Sigh, nothing's changed. He's still a troublemaker." Seeing Pierre being wrestled to the ground by Theo, screaming in pain, "Ah!" Prome turned away again, thinking, "Whatever, I'm just going to leave." A few days later, under the scorching sun, Noemi also arrived at their destination. Pierre turned his head and announced loudly, "Excellent, everyone. This is the capital, the heart of Stan." Noemi mumbled, "Finally, we've arrived." The group entered the city. Just then, an old man suddenly noticed them. His eyes narrowed as he silently observed the markings on the hands and feet of the Tyson people. And it wasn't just the old man. The townspeople also began to notice this. Amidst the somewhat oppressive atmosphere, Pierre said, "First, we need to find a safe place to stay." After speaking, he looked down at the necklace Capet had given him. After a long while, in the deserted alley, Theo asked suspiciously, "Are you sure we're on the right path? Why don't we go back and ask someone?" Pierre turned his head and replied, "It seems they all know who we are." After saying that, he remembered Cappy's necklace and thought, "Just by looking at this, I'm sure they'll all run away." Suddenly a voice rang out, "Hey, if you want to pass through here, you have to pay a fee. Did you know that before you came this way?" Pierre and the Tysian people quickly drew their weapons. Theo frowned and said, "See, I told you we should have taken a different path." Pierre laughed wryly. "I didn't know they would appear like this. I heard that only those blinded by money live in the capital. You appeared later than I thought." Cappy took off her cloak and said with a laugh, "That's right. I love beauty as much as I love money, so all of you can pay with your looks, especially you, the woman who looks most like my cute rabbit." Naomi happily called out, "Cappy!" After a moment, a blonde girl hugged her and exclaimed, "Naomi, thank goodness you're safe." Naomi tilted her head and asked, "Is everyone all right?" A girl with crimson hair asked, "What difficulties have you been through? This beautiful face looks so haggard." Pierre chuckled and said, "Ha, everyone's very excited to see us, huh?" Theo thought to himself, "She's still very beautiful." Cappy suddenly spoke up and asked, "Those people over there are them, right? The criminals?" Pierre corrected, "They are the Tysian people." Cappy couldn't help but ask suspiciously, "Aren't they the ones who kidnapped your friend?" Pierre said, "Well, it's like this." After hearing his explanation, Cappy nodded. "As long as they can pay, they are all my guests." Pierre narrowed his eyes and asked, "I thought you said we could pay with our looks." Cappy replied, "That price only applies to Noemi, her husband, and you. There's no reason for me to shelter them for free, is there? If they want to stay here with you, they need to pay." Pierre let out a helpless sigh. "How much do you want?" Cappy rubbed her chin, revealing a shrewd, businesslike smile. "Tyson has the weapon known as the strongest in the world. That's enough." In the evening, outside the building, Pierre said, "We're going to scout this area. Why are you out here? You should stay and rest with your wife, shouldn't you?" Theo replied, "She's in the process of learning how to communicate with the crown. She's trying so hard, so I have to try too." Pierre said thoughtfully, "Are you worried about us being in the capital? You don't need to be. There are many people protecting Noemi now. We are always here, and the people from Tysain are too, even if it's only temporary. But I see that they treat Noemi very well."
And she doesn't just have human friends, ha ha ha, she also has her Eidos by her side. After saying something that pierced Theo's heart, Pierre innocently asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" Before he could finish, he cried out in pain, "Ow!" After punching the wall hard, Theo said in a low voice, "Look here, why is Eidos hers?" Pierre stammered, "So Noemi is Eidos's." Theo immediately looked up, asking with a murderous look, What did you just say? He thought to himself, Noemi is his? Then, burning with rage, he said, she doesn't belong to anyone. Pierre raised his hands. All right, I was wrong. At this, Pierre suddenly frowned and quickly pulled Theo back. At the same time, a procession of carriages slowly moved past. The leader, who looked like a merchant, said, Hurry up, the king is waiting. On the carriage, drops of water dripped onto the road. 2 burly men were pulling the carriage, gritting their teeth. In the alley, Theo and Pierre watched in silence. Theo whispered, It's ice. I think they're going to the palace. Why would they need so much ice at the palace? And why do they have to move it in the middle of the night? At the same time, in the bathroom, a girl dropped a flower into the tub. Another girl said, Here, you'll be beautiful again in no time. Noemi asked doubtfully, Do I look that bad? The brown-haired girl replied, No, you're beautiful. But don't you want to give your husband a big surprise? Your journey here must have been very difficult, traveling with a Taisean. You two probably didn't have time to get intimate, and that's not good for a newlywed couple. Today will make you look truly beautiful. The blonde girl next to her added, Yes, you can also take advantage of this. At this moment, the brown-haired girl suddenly turned and asked loudly, Hey, everything's ready, right? A black-haired girl smiled and gave a thumbs up. So the brown-haired girl and the blonde girl also gave thumbs up, facing Noemi's doubtful expression. In a magical atmosphere, Noemi suddenly smiled.
Meanwhile, upon returning to the inn, Pierre said, I'll find out more when it's light. Get some rest. Theo nodded. All right, let me know if anything happens. He thought to himself, it's probably nothing. Nothing could be more significant than the Taisean people coming to the capital. No sooner had he finished thinking than he stopped short. Looking towards the girl standing at the door, a huge question mark appeared above Theo's head. One girl asked, Are you ready for bed? The crimson-haired girl pointed inside and said, Noemi has already gone into the room. Theo vaguely replied, Oh, okay. Before leaving, another girl said, Have a good night. Theo, slightly flustered, replied, Oh, thank you. As he stepped into the room, he pondered, Why are they acting like this? Do women here all have to behave this way in front of a strange man? Thinking this, Theo, as usual, asked, Noemi, have you eaten yet? Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly exclaimed in bewilderment, Huh? Noemi walked out wearing a midriff-bearing dress, smiling and saying, Theo, under his astonished gaze. Noemi spun around and said, They say this style is very popular in the capital these days. Have you ever seen anything like this? Theo silently lowered his head, a certain part of him slightly protruding. Noemi still innocently asked,
It doesn't suit me? Theo remained silent, which made Noemi even more suspicious. Theo, she called, patting his shoulder. Accidentally, her hand slipped down to his chest, and Noemi immediately felt someone's heart beating extremely fast. Theo's face immediately turned red. He turned his head, trying to suppress his embarrassment, and said, It suits you perfectly. Noemi smiled, gently wrapped her arm around his neck, and called, Theo, you know, that time I kissed you, I felt like I had instantly become an old woman, and I thought, I only want to grow old with you, not with anyone else. To be able to survive and be by your side like that, I'm willing to do anything. Theo's face turned even redder. He silently swallowed a mouthful of saliva, soothing his dry throat.
Noemi said again, I want to thank you again for accompanying me to the capital and respecting my choice. Theo wrapped his arms around her waist and asked in a low voice, Are you happy? Noemi replied, Yes, every day. And like you, I find myself grateful for more and more people. Pierre, his villagers, Cappy, and the people here, and now including Tacy too. And Edos. Hearing this, Theo's jealousy was about to flare up again. Noemi was still saying, I'm so grateful for everyone. But before she could finish, Theo locked her lips. The two began to kiss passionately. Theo's heart was filled with thoughts. Happiness. Did such things ever matter to me? Before I met you, all I pursued was recognition from my family. I was always in a hurry and only cared about results. Right and wrong were all that mattered to me. You helped me escape that life. You made me do unexpected things, and you always deviated from the plan. Absolutely nothing in your actions was effective. I remember when I yelled, Why would you choose a life that will kill you? So stupid.
Theo continued to think, I can't let someone like you take care of yourself because I'm too worried, and I've inadvertently been drawn to you, and I've felt things I've never felt before. These strange feelings of contentment, these moments linger, and sometimes all I want is to hold on to them. It makes me wonder if such feelings have ever existed in this world. Now all I care about is your happiness, more than what's right or wrong. After they separated, Theo asked, Are you happy? Noemi smiled and replied, Yes, every day. Hearing that, Theo also smiled. Now you are my family, my only home. All you need to say is that you're happy, and I feel completely fine. Noemi then said, Pierre, his villagers, Gabby, and the people here, and now including Taisei and Edos. Theo silently thought, I'd take that back, not everything is fine. Then he hugged Noemi again and gave her a kiss. Noemi slowly backed away, and when her foot tripped on the bed, she let out a soft sound, and fell backward. Theo lay on top of her, and the two continued to engage in sweet nothings. After a long while, Theo finally pulled away. Breathing heavily, he kissed Noemi's neck, and she cried out, Ah, Theo. With a soft moan, Theo slowly lifted her leg. Just as the two were about to do something intimate, a figure suddenly appeared in the room. Theo looked up and immediately saw Edo standing there, observing. She tilted her head and asked, "Are you two having fun? You two are playing around while I'm locked up like this. How insolent." Theo angrily retorted, "You're the insolent one." Noemi quickly pulled him back. "Theo, I can hear her. I can hear Edos, something I couldn't do before." Edos said irritably, "Today I haven't even been able to communicate, so I'm wondering why. Now I see you practicing with this substitute body. How disrespectful. That's why I was summoned," and Theo suddenly yelled, "Shut up!" He sprang to his feet, one hand gripping the iron crown.
His other hand grabbed Ados by the collar. Noemi hurriedly ran after him, calling out loudly, "Theo, don't be so rude." Pierre couldn't see Ados, so he asked, confused, "What's going on?" As soon as he finished speaking, Theo threw the crown into a chest. Then he threw Ados in as well. Seeing this, Pierre called out even more confused, "Theo!" Under his and Promé's suspicious gaze, Theo turned around, pointed at the chest wrapped in 81 layers at his feet, and said, "Don't open it until tomorrow." Pierre said, But," Theo interrupted, "just do as I say." Noemi walked over with a forced smile. "Are you two talking? It's already late anyway." Promé replied, "Actually, this is the right time. What are you planning to do tomorrow?" Theo asked suspiciously, "What are you talking about?" Promé replied, "We can't stay in the capital for too long. We've been keeping watch here, but we can't move around freely. The people here consider us criminals." Seeing Cappy approaching, Noemi quietly asked, But how did Taisi come to be rumored as a criminal?"
Inside the Imperial Palace, a guard said, "We have safely brought the ice into the palace, but before we finish, there are a few things I need to report." Facing him was a silver-haired man, Etor, the Emperor of Slan, who spoke, "Speak." The guard recounted, "We have found the saintess of the Olak temple, as well as the individual believed to have abducted her. More importantly, they have entered the capital along with criminals." After speaking, he stood there awaiting orders. Etor's voice deepened. "Those criminals dare to think they can set foot on our land again? Go and capture every single one of them alive." By Naomi's side, Cappy replied, "That is because Taishan killed Slan's former emperor. A long time ago, Slan and Taishan were in conflict with each other over their territories. Then one day, a person appeared wanting to sign a peace treaty between the two nations. That person was the former emperor, Felix Alama, who was the first in the Slan royal family to sign a ceasefire agreement with Taishan, and the agreement seemed as if peace was finally within reach. But then Taishan betrayed Slan by killing the former emperor when no guards were watching.
His children all went mad with grief and betrayal. Even the eldest son who ascended the throne quickly abdicated as soon as his successor came of age, and the current king is that very child." Cappy shrugged. "That was only 30 years ago. So do you think the citizens of this country will forget about it? If they knew Taisayan appeared in the capital, the people might throw them into the sand dunes and disarm them." Promé said angrily, "That's ridiculous. Do you know how difficult our lives have been, all because of those damned accusations? Because of it, all of our people have—" Cappy calmly asked back, "So who did it?" Promé loudly replied, "How should I know? You—" Pierre quickly interjected, "Promé." Cappy sighed again. "It's just a story passed down, so why get angry at me?" Pierre said, "Whatever the truth may be, but Taisayan has had a very difficult journey here anyway, so we need a different plan."
Before we go, we need to scout around first. Then let's ask Ito what the next step is. On the street, Noemi asked, "Do you really think Taisayin did it, Theo? About killing the former emperor?" Theo looked around as he replied, "I don't know, but that's history everyone here knows." Noemi thought to herself, "Sinners. In Slan, the Taisayin are not called criminals, they are called sinners. It's like in Olak's Bible. If someone is behind this..." At this point she said, "But history can also be biased, Theo. Brahme seems very upset. Could the real culprit be someone else?" Theo remained silent. He thought to himself, "Around the time the former emperor was assassinated, my aunt also frequently visited Slan." He began to recall what he had heard. He was the first in the Slan royal family to sign a ceasefire agreement with Taisayin. Joanna wanted to use its power to reconcile the differences between Taisayin and Slan, so she became an arbitrator between the two nations. After piecing things together, Theo continued to speculate. It's also possible that my aunt was somehow involved in their rivalry. Just as he thought that, a sound suddenly echoed from behind them. Theo and Noemi quickly turned their heads. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Pierre was gloomily thinking, what we do next is important, but I think there will be trouble if Brahme and Cappy are kept close to each other. Thinking about the descendants of enemies living in the same house, maybe things aren't so bad after all, huh?" He suddenly noticed a group of people in front of him. He thought suspiciously, Knights? They're coming to where we are. I feel like I've met him somewhere before." At this thought, Pierre froze. He quickly turned around. Damn it. Recalling the old man who had intently observed them when they entered the capital and his current gaze, Pierre continued to think, "They found everyone." At the same time, where Cappy was, the injured girls who were being pointed at cried out, "Ah!" Cappy loudly asked, "What are you doing?" One of them quickly replied, "We are following the king's orders. Stand back." Pierre burst through the door.
Seeing the situation inside, he cried out, "Brame!" Suddenly an arm reached out to block his way. A brown-haired knight named Aiken said, "Long time no see."
Anyway, I wouldn't mind meeting you again. Pierre gritted his teeth and called out, "Akin!" He then said, "Take him away." A few minutes later, the entire group was marched away through the streets. Upon seeing that scene, Theo and Naomi were both speechless with surprise. As if sensing their gaze, a knight immediately turned his head to look over.
Theo and Naomi quickly hid themselves among the crowd. At this moment, a knight suddenly shouted, "Hurry up!" The surrounding people whispered curiously, "My God, what's happening?" Theo turned his head, thinking irritably, "Damn it, Pierre." When the two returned to the room, Cappy, with a hand to his forehead, said, "Suddenly the guards stormed in and arrested all the criminals. Perhaps that's a good thing. At least my people are safe. Listen, you two, why don't we leave the capital? The criminals have been taken to the palace, and now we don't even know if they'll survive. Besides, I don't want to attract the Emperor's attention. Look at what they've destroyed. The weapons we got from Tysain won't be enough to cover the costs. Anyway, hurry up. We have to leave before something similar happens." Beside them, Edo suddenly yelled, "No, I can't. I can't abandon my people here. This place is like the belly of a snake. My disciples will all be killed." Noemi mumbled, "Belly of a snake?" Slan and Olak both rejected Edos, so he calls them snakes. After thinking, Noemi immediately asked, "Cappy, is Slan part of the Olak temple?" Cappy asked back, "Does that matter at a time like this?" Noemi replied, "Yes, it does, because it could also mean that the Tysain people weren't the ones who killed the former king." Cappy sighed. "You know the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So even if they might not belong to the Olak temple, they're still friendly with each other. As long as Slan hates the criminals and works with the Olak temple, then this place is definitely not safe for us. What I mean is, in case you get caught and taken back to the temple, it's better to run away now." Edos rushed, but without waiting for her to finish, Noemi said, "Every time I tried to run, there was nowhere to hide. It's the same here. Like the people I met on the road, they always showed me a way forward, even the Tysain people."
There must be a way to free them. That's why Theo suddenly stepped forward, hugged her, and then called out, "Gabby, help us one last time. I'll repay you no matter what it is. Can you distract the palace guards somehow?" Edos looked over in surprise, and Theo added, "Meanwhile, we'll sneak into the palace." With Pierre, Slan's knights urged loudly, "Hurry up, shut up and move." Pierre clicked his tongue, thinking, "Damn it, we can't just stay locked up like this." He looked towards the stone cart at the end of the corridor, thinking to himself, "I wonder where they got all that stone from, the West Palace, and why?" After a while, the knights roughly pushed them all into the dungeon. Once inside, remember to behave yourselves. Prome gritted her teeth in anger, shouting, "You call yourselves royal guards? Then why are you locking us up for no reason? What crime have we committed?" Akin stepped forward without a word, saying coldly, "According to the records from King Felix's 7-year reign, a Tysain weapon was found next to the former emperor. We have sufficient reason to imprison and kill you. If you want to blame someone, then blame your ancestors for passing their sins down to you." Eris, who was brought in later, heard this and said, "It's also possible someone falsified the records. After all, history is only written by the survivors." In the quiet night, Theo and Naomi snuck into the palace. Theo wiped his sweat and said, "We've already been through this way." Naomi replied, "The palace is too vast. I don't even know where to begin searching."
Theo whispered, "Prisoners are usually taken high up in towers or down into dungeons, making escape more difficult. They will also have guards watching over them, so we should look for areas with many guards." Before he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out, "Not that way." When Theo and Noemi looked back, they saw a squad of guards heading their way. While the two were still observing, Edos reappeared and said, "Hide, we can't hide together. You stay here, you go over there." As she spoke, she separated the two of them, and after they had hidden, the squad of guards passed by. Amidst the sound of footsteps, mixed with whispers, "The criminals have now been taken into the palace. Make sure to keep an eye on them." "Yes, Deputy Commander." At this moment, the iron crown in the bag suddenly stirred, emitting a clink. The squad leader quickly turned his head, asking suspiciously, "What was that sound?" Then they turned around, taking heavy steps towards the two. Theo gritted his teeth, thinking, "Damn it!" He grabbed Edos' shoulder. "Sir, you can talk to Noemi, right? Tell her to meet me at the back gate of the palace by the bush where we entered. We'll only search until sunrise, and if we find nothing, we'll escape. A massive amount of ice was brought into Slan Palace yesterday. I don't know what it is, but something is definitely suspicious, so both of you must stay away from any low-temperature areas."
Seeing him draw his knife, Noemi asked worriedly, "Theo, what are you going to do?" But Theo rushed out of cover, swinging his knife and striking the squad leader. The guards behind immediately shouted, "Intruder!" Still in cover, Noemi thought worriedly, "Theo!" He turned his head, casting a protective glance at Noemi. Then he quickly fought his way through and ran off, the guards hastily shouting, "Chase him!" Just then, Ado suddenly approached and poked Noemi, saying, "Let's go." Noemi quickly ran off, secretly praying in her heart that Theo wouldn't be hurt. After the human and the ghost had walked a short distance, Ado said again, "He said to stay away from low-temperature areas."
"Are you listening to me?" Noemi lowered her head, remaining silent. As she passed a room, she suddenly noticed the pattern on the door. "Millipede? Why is that symbol here? I know something is going on between the Olak temple and Slan." Seeing her walk towards it, Ados quickly called out,
Hey! Noemi pressed her ear against the door, thinking to herself, this means it's also related to Tysain. When she opened the door, a cold gust of wind immediately blew out. Noemi's eyes widened in surprise. Before them was a room full of boulders. After only a few steps inside, Ados complained, "It's too cold." Noemi remained silent, her gaze fixed on the enormous coffin in the middle of the room. After a moment of hesitation, Noemi took a step, walking straight towards the coffin. She raised her hand and pulled back the thin curtain. The coffin was still a short distance away, so Noemi stepped closer. Looking inside, she thought in surprise, "This is a corpse. This isn't even a tomb. Why is it here? And what are these blocks of ice for? Who is this person, locked in a room with the symbol of the Olak temple?" As if by fate, Noemi reached out and touched the person. The iron crown at her side immediately flew up, and Noemi's eyes glowed. Seeing images appear, she thought to herself, "This person isn't dead. I can see this person's life. I see his past, his present, and even his future." Ados, standing beside her, also saw everything. Suddenly, those memories shattered and flew into her. Ados said in a low voice, "So this person is still alive?" At that moment, the room door opened again. Ados stepped in. "We have an unwelcome guest here."
"Fami, what are you doing? Stop her from touching that corpse," said the man who looked like a merchant. "Forgive me, your majesty." Edor pondered for a moment, then ordered coldly, "Seize her." When Noemi was seized, Edor spoke again. "Speak now. How dare you set foot in my palace?" Noemi knelt on the floor, earnestly pleading, "Release Tysain, please." Edor was silent for a moment. Then he lifted her chin. Then he asked coldly, "Do you mean the criminals? Evil is their true nature. Why should I pardon the one who killed him?" Noemi turned her head to look at the corpse in the coffin again, thinking in surprise, "Is that the former emperor? Didn't the former emperor already die?" Edor released her, turned around and said, "You have seen his corpse. I cannot let you live. Execute her." Akin stepped in and said, "Forgive me, your majesty. I don't think we can do that right now. A delegation from the Olak temple has arrived. It's the Pope's son." Noemi thought in astonishment, "Enzo." In a corner of the palace, Theo rubbed his aching wrist and muttered, "Luckily I escaped in time. It's only a matter of time. I need to hurry." After walking for a while longer, he suddenly stopped, hid behind a wall, and looked inside. Found it. Inside, a guard was pacing back and forth. Suddenly, Theo rushed in with a knife, and then a swishing sound echoed.
A moment later, Theo stood up and went inside, leaving behind the two bodies of the guards. After looking left and right for a moment, Theo saw a pile of Tysain swords and weapons. There were too many people here who were not among those captured yesterday. Theo looked away again, surveying his surroundings and thinking. Those were traces of torture, and it seemed to have happened a long time ago, not just recently. He wondered, could this truly be something one human could do to another? He suddenly recalled Noemi's words. Yes, because it could also mean that the Tysain weren't the ones who killed the former emperor. Theo thought to himself, Olak, that bastard is toying with us. Noemi was almost his wife. If we hadn't met, perhaps she, Noemi, would have. At Pierre's location, a guard looked outside, wondering in surprise. What's that sound? Then he shouted, "Intruder!" followed by a pained cry. Arg!
Theo appeared holding a bunch of keys. Pierre, surprised, called out, "Theo!" Theo quickly opened the cell door. Pierre immediately rushed out and embraced him, saying, "I'm glad you're safe. What about Noemi? Are the merchants all right?" Theo replied, "The merchants are all safe, and so is Cappy. Noemi and I snuck into the palace together. We got separated in the garden, and she headed towards the west wing." Pierre said, startled, "I saw knights carrying ice in there." Hearing that, Theo immediately grabbed a guard by the collar and asked, "What's in the west wing? Tell me, what are you doing in there? Speak now." Another guard said, "That area is reserved for the king and his closest confidants. No one knows about it except Fami and our commander." Promi picked up his spear, stepped forward and said, "The commander and I know the layout of the palace. We will help you find her." Pierre nodded. "Yes, let's go together, Theo." Theo shook his head and stood up. "No, we were captured on the way here, so it will be difficult to move as a group. Everyone should find a safe place to hide, including you, Pierre. I will meet everyone again before sunrise, after I find Noemi." In the grand hall of the royal palace, Addo sat on the throne and asked, "You barge into someone else's palace without warning, and yet you consider yourself a person of etiquette? Neither you nor your sister show me any respect at all." Enzo said, "This matter is very urgent, so I didn't have time to request an audience."
Your Majesty, since your Majesty and Olak Temple have had a long and close relationship, His Holiness believes you will understand. Our saintess does not act on behalf of the temple, so if she was disrespectful, I apologize to you on her behalf. We will send more ice in the coming months. It will help you preserve what you have." After hearing this, Noemi thought, do they know that the former emperor is not dead? Etor said irritably, "You speak as if you are bestowing a favor upon me, yet you calculate an exorbitant sum, enough to run a country just because I need ice. To cover that enormous cost, I would have to turn my country into a flower garden. Once my grandfather recovers," Fami quickly stopped him. "Your Majesty, please calm down. If they know the former emperor is alive, the criminals will not leave us alone." Enzo said, "I will ensure that everything our saintess has seen and heard will not leak out and will remain known only to us. Therefore, hand her over to me." Etor thought to himself, It sounds like a request, but in reality he is ordering me. All right, this is all for grandfather. Thinking this, he waved his hand and said, there won't be a second chance. The holy knights immediately stepped towards Noemi, smiling and saying, greetings, saintess. She was startled and thought, so even Slan is under the control of Olak Temple. No, I don't want to go back there. At this, Noemi immediately shouted loudly, Your Majesty, they are just taking advantage of you, Your Majesty. Your Majesty cannot trust Olak Temple.
Your Majesty. No matter how loudly she screamed, Enzo remained unfazed. After a while, in a room, Naomi shrieked, Don't come near me. I'd rather die than go back to that hellhole. Never. As Naomi was about to throw the vase in her hand, Enzo immediately stepped forward and grabbed her hand. He said, I understand how you feel. That place is hell for me too. Calm down and listen to me. At Hugo's mansion, Chamberlain asked, Do you mean you'll help all the families rejected by the Olak Temple? Hugo replied, Yes, just like how I saved the Fidgar family. Chamberlain asked, May I ask why? Hugo answered, I'm thinking of recruiting them into my forces, Chamberlain. Chamberlain said worriedly, If they don't support the Olak Temple, most of them will be ruined, so even if you gather them under your banner, I don't think they'll be of any help. And if you're planning something like that, you'll need enough money to do it. Hugo said, The Fidgar family are my in-laws. They have a lot of money, so you don't need to worry about that. Chamberlain thought silently, he talks as if it's his own money.
Hugo casually tapped his foot, smiling as he said, In return, they will gain the protection of the royal family. For the nobles, commoners, and the poor, whom the temple has turned its back on, we can be their shield. After speaking, he smiled again, recalling Enzo's words in his mind. You still have many things to worry about. You should stay here and deal with them. Remembering that, Hugo muttered, I'm eager to show him everything I've done. I wonder when he'll return. At Slan Palace, Noemi asked loudly, Hell? You and I were born at the same time, but you always enjoyed all the luxuries, while I became a sacrifice to God. Whether big or small, you always knew everything in the family that no one told me. You were allowed to leave the temple and see the world outside, and you even had the privilege of communicating with others. And you call that hell for you? Enzo said in a low voice, When we were young, a priest was caught having an inappropriate relationship with a man. You don't know what happened to him afterward. That's because everyone treated you like a flower that couldn't hear or see anything. But I was forced to see everything. As you said, I witnessed everything, big or small, that happened in our family. Everything. I should have suffered the same fate as that man. Noemi asked startled, What? Enzo added, But I truly didn't want that, which is why I sought to meet you. I will help you, whatever you want to do.
Theo stepped out from his hiding spot and cautiously asked, Why should we trust you? Enzo turned his head, but before he could say anything, Theo plunged a dagger into the wall behind Enzo. Noemi gasped, covering her mouth. Theo! Theo asked coldly, Weren't you the one who aimed an arrow at your sister when all she was trying to do was escape to survive? Then you call Noemi and have her stand behind you. Seeing her hesitate, Theo urged, Hurry up! Enzo was silent for a moment, then said, You two don't trust me, but you need my help, don't you? It will be very difficult for you two to escape this place without using the Bellin family's name. Either kill me and die at the hands of the Emperor, or let me go and survive. Choose. After a while, in a room, Enzo sat down, rubbing his neck as he spoke. The former emperor is currently in a coma. Ether realized he couldn't wake him with existing medical techniques, so he used ice to lower the former emperor's body temperature and slow down his metabolism until a way could be found. That's how he was able to delay the former emperor's death. Theo nodded. So that's why he brought all the ice to the Imperial Palace. Enzo added, In exchange for Slan receiving ice from Bellin, they agreed to cultivate Milope, the flower offered to God. This agreement has been in place for several decades. Noemi thought to herself, So that's why Edos called Slan a snake. That means the problem Edos and I need to solve must be related to the former emperor. Thinking this, she immediately said, We will have to wake him up so that we can break the agreement between our family and Slan, and also appease the emperor's wrath.
To Theo's surprise, Noemi, all we need is his help to get out of here. Noemi took his hand and said softly, We can verify the names of Taisei and Edels. When I became one with the Iron Crown, I saw the past, present, and future. If I can see the former emperor's memories and his future with his power, I can find out the cause of this terrible war that everyone is sick of. Enzo, who was beside them, thought to himself, She has matured so much. Suddenly, Noemi turned to him. There's something I want to ask you, Enzo. Is our family involved in the former emperor's plan? Enzo stood up and said, I'm not sure, but one thing I am certain of is Olak's involvement, as Slan has become a flower garden exclusively for him ever since. If we want to know exactly how he's involved, then you must see the former emperor's memories. If you want to approach him, you'll need someone to distract Etor and Lingard. I can do that for you. Looking at the hand extended towards her, Noemi thought to herself, I still can't trust him. But now, after a moment of contemplation, she looked up at Theo.
Naomi thought again, I need Belon's authority and someone who knows the Olak Temple well. Having thought that, she immediately said, If you betray us, my husband and I won't let you get away with it. After a while, outside the Imperial Palace, Pierre reached out and caught a bird. He then removed the letter from its leg and said, This is from Theo. Bromide approached and asked, What does it say? Pierre replied, He wants us to go to the west of the castle at sunrise. Reading up to this point, he paused for a moment, then loudly asked, What?
Seeing him hesitate, Bromide immediately snatched the letter. After reading it, he loudly said, "The former emperor is still alive. Those bastards, they've been hiding this from us all this time, and they pinned the former emperor's murder on us?" Pierre felt his headache. He pressed his hand to his forehead and said, "I don't know what's happening anymore." Eris said, "This is truly a good thing. The former emperor will know the truth about what happened that day." He thought to himself, that day, in his memory, Joanna knelt at his feet, sincerely saying, "You must hand over Ados's bones to Felix."
"You might not understand what I'm saying, but this is the only way for all of you to survive." Eris asked, "So do you like him? Or did he say if you give him the bone, he'll make you queen or something? What were you two doing for such a long time?" Before he could finish, Joanna slapped him across the face. Then she cursed loudly. "Damn it!" Eris rubbed his face and said, "Edos is our protector, and this is his bone. That iron crown contains his ashes and is our faith. If I give it to you, then who will protect our people?" Returning to the present, Eris added, "If he were still alive, we could know the truth about everything. So when the sun rises, let's go meet your friend." Inside the Imperial Palace, Enzo led a troop of holy knights in. With every thundering footstep, Enzo's expression remained emotionless. Behind the troop of knights, Noemi and Theo advanced, wearing 2 white coats. Midway, the two secretly slipped away. Enzo subtly glanced behind him and thought to himself, "I will request an audience with the Emperor and try to buy as much time as possible. You two go meet the former Emperor again." Meanwhile, Noemi and Theo quickly ran towards the ice room. After the two entered, Pierre, who had been inside for a long time, called out, "Theo!" Theo was surprised. "Pierre?" After a moment, Pierre explained, "After receiving your letter, I was quite suspicious, but what on earth is going on here?" Prame angrily said, "These bastards, how long have they been lying to me?" Noemi stepped forward and said, "There's no time. I need to touch his skin. Help me remove his bandages." Theo stepped forward and quickly removed the white bandages from Felix's body.
Then he asked in surprise, "What is this? Why hasn't he aged? And he also has no scars or wounds on his body." Prome grew even angrier, saying that Tysian wounded him with a weapon. "I told you it was all lies. Those bastards have put all the blame on us." Pierre whispered, "Wounds can heal over time." Prome's face immediately darkened. "What are you saying?" At this moment, Ados suddenly appeared beside Noemi, saying, "Let's try it." Noemi nodded resolutely. Then she touched Felix's skin. When activating the special ability, Ados also returned to his true form, saying, "We will find his most intense memory first." Noemi's hand immediately emitted a dazzling light, accompanied by a gentle breeze. At the same time, the Imperial Palace suddenly shook, and a patrol squad was swayed by the tremors. Ados suddenly remembered something. He quickly shouted, "To the west of the palace immediately!" In the icy cold room, a few drops of sweat ran down Noemi's forehead. She thought to herself, "I am going through the memories of this person, the former Emperor Felix."
As he was walking down the street, someone suddenly shouted, "My God, that's a poisonous flower. The Emperor himself approved it." "What are you talking about? I heard our neighboring country offer this to God." Joanna rubbed her neck and said, "As far as I can see, both God and the Emperor are fools." The flower stall owner angrily asked, "What? If you keep talking like that, you'll get into trouble, young lady." Joanna remained firm. "If it were me, I would never let this flower near my children or grandchildren." Felix, curious, stepped forward and asked, "Do you mean Amatana is poisonous? Do you have proof?" Joanna replied, "The Olak temple doesn't grow these flowers themselves. They simply use money and power to make people around them offer flowers to them." Felix chuckled and said, "Money for flowers? Where both parties exchange something for what they need? That sounds reasonable." Joanna sighed. "Do they ever need us to be so eager as to buy flowers from afar? Don't people here have many doubts? They've established themselves in the land of Ascana, where the soil is more fertile, so why would they bother growing flowers so far away in Slan? If the Emperor of Slan can't even think of that, then he must be a fool, right?" After she left, the flower stall owner shouted again, "My God, what a rude girl. Don't you ever come back here again." On the other side, RS asked, "What were you talking about for so long? I've been waiting this whole time." Watching the two gradually walk away, Felix suddenly smiled thoughtfully. She's certainly an interesting girl." A few days later, at the border between Slan and Taisen,
Joanna asked in surprise, "Huh? What is that person doing here?" Felix stepped forward and said, "Someone recently told me that I should reconsider the exchange between Slan and the Olak temple, so I thought I would look into other options. Hello, and thank you for agreeing to meet us." Eris took his hand, then said, "She is my guest. I am Eris, son of Chief Tysian." Felix also introduced himself. "I am Felix, Emperor of Slan." Not long after, Joanna stood up and read the alliance communique. "For the common welfare and security of the lands of Tysian and Slan, a peace treaty shall be established." During the grand ceremony, Felix asked, "What is that girl's name?" Eris asked back, "Why do you ask?" Felix immediately replied, "She is the one who brings peace between two nations that have been enemies for hundreds of years. At the very least, I should know her name." Eris said, "The treaty has not been signed yet. I will tell you later." At this moment, Joanna read aloud again, "I, Joanna Forgot, am a witness to this peace treaty."
Felix smiled and murmured, "Ah, it's Joanna." Hearing her name called, she turned her head.
At this moment, Eris and Felix simultaneously raised their national insignias. Eris declared loudly, "With this treaty, Tysion and Slan." Before he could finish, the crowd below cheered loudly. Eris continued, "We'll live in harmony." The Knights of Slan immediately stood at attention. Then a horn sounded. Fami, still a young man at the time, looked sternly at the covenant in his hand. The emperor said, "Slan will sign an agreement with Tysion, and their economy will be stabilized. Therefore, they will no longer trade Amathena. Your Holiness, it seems Slan has lost the opportunity to receive God's favor." At this moment, the ice room door was under attack. Pierre and Promé quickly grabbed their weapons, looking warily at the door. Promé gritted his teeth and cursed. "Damn it, they found us. They'll break in soon." Pierre quickly said, "Theo, I need to hurry." Theo turned his head, thinking to himself, "Noemi, isn't she finished yet?" On the other side, Noemi was still focused on looking into the past. At this moment, the room door was kicked open, and Aiken, radiating murderous intent, stepped in. He loudly commanded, "Capture them alive." The knights immediately cheered and charged forward. On the other side, Noemi still had her eyes tightly shut. Hearing the shouts, she frowned slightly. In the memory she saw, Felix said, "An extraordinary woman. I can't believe she could make Slan and Tysion agree to an exchange. A woman who could achieve what the ancestors of both nations could not." Fami, who was beside him, was somewhat silent. After a moment of contemplation, he asked, "How long do you think such hasty peace will last?" Felix replied, "That depends on how much effort we put in."
Now, drop that grumpy face and enjoy yourself. In the evening, Felix chatted with Joanna.
He claimed to be Olak's disciple and sowed the seeds into the former emperor's throat. She paused for a moment, then pointed.
"And Slan will also become a sanctuary for everyone." He turned to look at Eris. Below the platform, when Theo turned to look at Noemi, he was surprised and thought, "Eidos, he has completely matured now." The grand ceremony ended, and Enzo and his...
Felix paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "My friend, Joanna, asked me to look after your things, but I don't see her anywhere. Are you two together?" Seeing that he...
The emperor ordered that no existing flower in Slan be spared. The ones in charge of this were Pierre and Akin. Yesterday, Slan and Taisei were still enemies, but now they have joined forces to burn all the Milos fields across the continent.
In the middle of the road, Enzo stopped, raising his head to look at the sky. "I hope that in the land where Olak resides, you are ready to
Recalling Enzo's words, that place was also hell for me. Noemi continued to think, what did he mean by that? But since he had given her the iron crown that the family still preserved, she must trust him at least to that extent. This is so hard. Well, getting around isn't easy either, along with Theo, Pierre, and the driver. Enzo, seeing her sigh beside him, asked, "Are you worried? You're sighing so deeply." Noemi replied, "It would be a lie if I said no, and we'll have to fight God soon." She thought to herself that she couldn't fully trust her brother either. Enzo then said, "This was decided the moment you left the temple." Noemi said, "At that time, I just wanted to live. I didn't think everything would be so mind-bending, but ultimately that feeling has led me to this moment." Enzo bowed his head and said in a low voice, "You may have never thought about it, but I have always lived and thought about this moment. In this war, God will surely die." Noemi asked, "How can you be so sure?" Enzo replied, "I've seen it."
"When I was young, I also had abilities like yours," Noemi asked in surprise. "Abilities like mine? You can also see the future?" Enzo replied, "Until I angered God." Recalling that moment, he pleaded, "Forgive me, I will obey your commands." But Olak merely replied, "Yes, you should." At that very moment, a light flashed in Enzo's eyes. With just a glance from him, I saw too much. I saw a world that only existed by God's design, a world where souls were suffering because of it, and because of all those wicked deeds. I even saw the moment God was killed. For daring to see all of that, I stood on the brink of death. So I prayed to God and swore that I would forget everything I had seen and only see and hear what he wanted me to see. I would live as his loyal child. But ever since I went against God's will, I have been plotting in silence, just waiting for his death." Enzo added, "Currently, I cannot see, but I can feel it very clearly. I can feel Olak's death, which I had foreseen, drawing near, and at that moment, I will be there." As Theo walked out with a towel, Eidos suddenly appeared. "The battle is about to begin, but both you and your wife look very tense." Theo laughed. "Olak is the one who should be tense." Eidos said, "True." Theo was silent for a few seconds, then asked, "You fought him before. Do you think we have a better chance?" Eidos smiled. "That's why I sacrificed my life in the past and bit him on the back of the neck. Olak has a fatal weakness, and now the whole world will target it." In the sanctuary, Olak angrily asked, "Why are my flowers burning? What are you doing?" Hector bowed respectfully and replied, "I have sent letters to the neighboring countries, but have not yet received a response."
At times like these, you must hold your ground. Since Father Enzo is currently bringing your wife back, why don't we hold the wedding as soon as possible? Hearing this, Olak smiled and said, he's the only one truly fulfilling his duty, isn't he? Noemi, I will become one with you, and I will bring everything back to how it was before. We will hold a grand wedding, and the entire continent will see. Convey this news to the faithful, and tell them to offer up Melope. Not long after, in front of the temple's notice board, the people buzzed with talk. They want each family to offer a Melope? Is it true that the saintess will return? But why? She ran away after marrying a merchant. Does this make any sense? Whether it does or not, I can't offer any more flowers. I have to work for months to afford to buy one. Inside the carriage, a red-robed noble said, if they're struggling so much to offer just one, how much do we have to offer to be enough? A blue-robed noble added, last year they treated me poorly just because I offered too little.
Amidst the crowd, a girl in a white cloak quietly approached. Cecilia clenched her fists in anger and said, those wretched temple people, this will cost as much as running the entire country for several years. Are they insane? Suddenly, a murmur arose. Look, it's Vidgar. Cecilia turned her head surprised, thinking, oh, there's my future husband. The people buzzed with chatter. Have you heard what happened to his family? They say there are a lot of Melopo in his ancestors' coffins. Could that flower really kill people? At this moment, Theo's ship was also about to dock. Enzo said, we're almost there. Noemi gazed thoughtfully at the land. She softly murmured, it's almost time to fight. As she stepped onto the land, seeing the hellish scene before her, Noemi covered her mouth and cried out, what's happening here? What's wrong with all these people? As she said this, she collapsed to her knees. At this moment, Enzo suddenly heard a sobbing sound. He turned his head and saw a child hiding behind a wall, covering their mouth and whimpering. Enzo immediately thought, something is wrong. No one is coming out, even though they know the saint is here. The one behind this must be my family. A priest behind him stammered, Lord Enzo. Enzo snapped back to reality and said, Montemont, to the Montemont mansion. Inside the Montemont mansion, Hugo slammed the table and declared loudly, I can no longer stand by and do nothing. That person with the snake tattoo has massacred all my people like cattle. Enzo, after receiving your letter, everyone has begun to oppose the Bellin family.
Protests erupted everywhere the Olak temple held influence. At the Bellin family mansion, the temple, and the square. The people continuously shouted, come out and give us an answer. Did you tell us to bring Melope here just so you could kill him? The knights hastily advised, step back, but the enraged people continued. Before you acted so powerful, but now you hide behind your soldiers. The runaway saintess was certainly not wrong. No sooner had the words fallen than a figure appeared in midair. Then, before the angry protesters, they saw a person with a snake tattoo appear. A bewildered man asked, what is that? A second later, he was lifted by the throat. Olak said in a deep voice, you are truly disrespectful to the god who has protected you. If you wish to challenge me so much, then try it. After that, the man turned into a stone statue and shattered.
Amidst the terrified screams of the people, he massacred everyone he touched. Upon hearing this, Noemi immediately affirmed, it's him, that's definitely Olak. Hugo said, I will go to the temple right now, and Noemi stepped forward and interrupted, please let us go there. Enzo added, right now only priests can safely access that place. Noemi nodded. Roig said, I will help Sir Hugo. When I heard you were coming, I had already assembled an army. Theo looked towards Noemi and softly replied, you still have your own business to attend to. Roig replied, I will wait, be careful on your way back. At this moment, Noemi also turned to Enjo and said, you and I should go to Olak's place immediately. Not long after, on the way to the temple, Noemi walked ahead, her hands bound by iron shackles.
Behind them, Enzo asked, what is Theo carrying? As Theo pulled the cart forward, he replied, that's the last offering I requested from Sir Hugo. Noemi thought in surprise, Milo? Just as she was about to ask, Enzo spoke again. Walking like this makes me feel like the Grim Reaper. Perhaps I should listen to your last words, huh? Theo's face darkened as he thought, what an unlucky thing to say. Noemi replied, what I wish for is a future after all of this. I've never thought about dying here. Enzo was surprised. A future? It seems you want to do something when the battle ends, huh? Noemi turned her head and said, yes, I want to have a happy married life. Theo smiled, stepped forward, and asked, I guess that means we definitely have to win, right? Hearing that, Enzo also let out a soft chuckle. Theo then asked, Enzo, what's the first thing you'll do when the battle ends? Enzo paused for a moment, then quietly replied, love? I want to try that too. When she saw Hector approaching, an invisible fear gripped Noemi's heart, and she silently called out, Father. When the four of them met, the entire atmosphere suddenly became silent. Suddenly, Hector picked up a cup of holy water and exclaimed, how can the wife of God return here with the stench of the outside world on her? But before he could pour the holy water over Noemi's head, Enzo quickly intervened. Your Holiness, there's no need to soil your hands. Hearing this, Hector handed the cup of holy water to Enzo and began to criticize. I shouldn't indulge you just because you are destined to become the wife of God.
I should have disciplined you the way I discipline your brother. Go inside and talk to God.
The three of them moved into the sanctuary when Enzo suddenly stopped. Then he reached out and closed the door tightly. The two priests locked outside were surprised. "Huh? Mr. Enzo?" They pounded on the door and repeatedly called out, "Mr. Enzo!" However, Enzo didn't care. He looked at Theo and said, "Once she meets God." Noemi, who was walking ahead, suddenly turned back, curiously watching the two whispering. Meanwhile, Enzo instructed Theo, "No matter what happens in there, you must prioritize Noemi's survival. Swear it now." Hearing this, Theo looked at him and helplessly asked, "Do I still need to swear?" After they finished discussing, they continued to move inside. Noemi led the way. When they reached the field of flowers, Olak's joyful voice rang out, "Aha, there you are, my son and my dearest wife." Seeing him, Theo immediately went on high alert. At this moment, Olak waved his finger and said, "Everything is finally in place." Immediately, Noemi was pulled closer. Olak wrapped his arm around her waist and asked, "Are you happy with your little outing, my dear wife? Now you belong here, by my side, and you will become my beautiful mummy, never to age." Suddenly, a clicking sound rang out, making Olak look up. Enzo calmly spoke, "Unfortunately." At the same time, Theo pressed a button in the vehicle. Immediately, the mechanism was activated, and oil sprayed everywhere. Enzo coldly looked at Olak and announced, "Today will be your end." As soon as he finished speaking, Theo used all his might to overturn the oil tank.
Next, he quickly lit a fire. Olak was stunned by a series of actions. "What are you doing?" Before he could finish speaking, Enzo let go. The moment the match dropped, the flames rapidly spread everywhere. Olak stared in dismay at the burning flowers. Meanwhile, Enzo quietly lit a candle. Then he moved quickly. Seizing the opportunity while Olak was distracted, Enzo lunged towards him. Noemi saw him and wondered, "What's on him?" Suddenly she realized, oil. Simultaneously, Enzo ignited himself, then tightly embraced Olak. In a flash, Olak cried out in pain, "Ah!" And Noemi, utterly panicked, screamed, "Enzo!" At this moment, Olak gritted his teeth and cursed, "You brat!" No matter what he said, Enzo wouldn't let go. Olak struggled in vain. He controlled his body to fly high and continuously screamed, "Let me go, you wretched little insect!" Seeing this, Noemi loudly called out, "Enzo!" But Enzo immediately cut her off. "Step back, focus on your task, don't miss this opportunity while God is still unable to recover."
"What are you doing, Theo Fidgar? You swore to me!" For a moment, Theo stood stunned, but when he heard Enzo shout, "Protect Noemi!" Theo quickly ran over and pulled Noemi away. Noemi struggled and cried out, "No!" On the other side, Olak furiously roared, "Urgh!" Soon, Olak broke free, making Enzo's body fly high. Enzo was engulfed by flames, gasping in immense pain. "Ach!" Seeing this, Noemi screamed, "Enzo!" Enzo turned his head to look at her and said, "Don't worry, this is my way of atonement." His voice slowly trailed off. "Finally, I am free." A few seconds later, both Noemi and Theo successfully ran out of the room. But Noemi was now crying heartbrokenly, sobbing, "How can this be? And you call this atonement? How can it be atonement if you're dead?" Noemi choked out, I never believed you. Even in the last moment, I didn't understand him." Theo's mood was no better. Suddenly, Theo offered comfort. "Noemi, Enzo gave us a chance. We must seize it. We cannot let those deaths be in vain."
Theo's pocket suddenly lit up and he quickly pulled out the iron crown. As soon as she saw it, Noemi calmed down. "That's right, I won't lose anyone else." Outside the temple, hurried footsteps echoed. On one side, Royak held back 2 gatekeepers. On the other side, enraged citizens marched in protest. "Ah!" Cecilia, leading the charge, fiercely yelled, "Get out of the way, you bastards!" A priest, seeing this, trembled and cried out, "Pope!" Hector angrily questioned, "How dare you? Where do you think you are? Get out of here!" Before he could finish speaking, Cecilia quickly lunged forward and slapped Hector hard across the face. Then she spoke, "Your Holiness, do you think you can get away with such a ridiculous act? You'd better not move or I'll give you a few more slaps." Royak, hearing this, turned his head in surprise to look at her. Inside the sanctuary, a pair of feet leisurely approached. Theo carefully helped Noemi to her feet. Suddenly, Noemi looked up and coldly called out, "Olak!" Opposite her, Olak slowly appeared. He angrily cursed, "You arrogant wretches, whether you are my wife or not, it's all the same. All of you must die." Noemi quickly summoned a stream of her light. At the same time, Olak unleashed a wave of black smoke. The two sources of power collided, creating a loud bang. On her side, Noemi showed no weakness, looking coldly at Olak. Even Theo, standing nearby, was surprised to see this side of her. At this moment, Noemi seriously assessed, "Olak, you have lost humanity's trust." Olak probably realized this. Noemi confidently declared, "We no longer serve you. The God who turned his back on us, you are nothing to us now." Hearing this, Olak mockingly replied, "Don't make me laugh. All of you are here because you believed in the future I once painted. If I don't exist, there will be no future you desire." Taking advantage of Noemi's startled hesitation, Olak struck her, setting her flying. Theo anxiously wanted to rush forward, "Noemi!" but he stopped short when he saw the iron crown fall to the ground.
On the other side, Noemi seriously retorted, I am not here for the future you have envisioned. I chose the path you tried to conceal, and I myself created this present. The things I chose to do and the people I met along the way are what brought me here. Even if you try to make me doubt myself, everything I've done won't easily disappear. Noemi quickly regained her strength and struck directly at Olak. Olak unexpectedly groaned. Ugh! Gasp! At the same time, Theo also managed to get close behind him. He gripped the iron crown tightly in his hand, and in an instant it transformed into a sharp blade. Suddenly, Edis's words echoed in his ear. Olak has a fatal weakness, and now the whole world will target it. Thinking of this, Theo immediately used all his strength to stab Olak in the back. Olak flinched in pain. Ugh! Then he slowly fell. Noemi continued to observe intently. After being attacked, Olak angrily cursed. You wretched insect! He suddenly noticed Edis's teeth. Olak quickly flung Theo's hand away, making him stumble. Ugh! Gasp!
But at this moment, Eidos reappeared and plunged the knife straight into him, making Olak panic. Seeing this, Eidos calmly spoke. I warned you, didn't I, Olak? I told you that in the end, you would die at the hands of humans. Olak angrily turned around and unleashed a wave of black smoke. Theo couldn't dodge in time and was immediately sent flying. Noemi saw this and immediately ran to Theo. While Noemi was checking Theo's wounds, Olak panted, Do you think a world without gods will be safe? Suddenly, Noemi noticed Theo's hand subtly move, and a wave of relief washed over her. Noemi gently took Theo's hand. Then she looked up at Olak and said, No matter how the world turns out, I'm not afraid. I realized after leaving this place why you are so obsessed with me. Perhaps you pretended to be omnipotent, but you're not even much stronger than humans. You only pretended that there was a future predetermined by God, but from the beginning, it never existed. Only human free will can create the future, and you only tried to control it, molding it to your own will. You killed people mercilessly, and when you discovered 2 children with the ability to see the future, how could you ignore them? Hearing this, Olak angrily gritted his teeth. Then he stood up straight and struck towards Noemi. However, his black smoke only swept past, leaving only a small scratch on Noemi's face. His power was diminishing. At this moment, Noemi's voice slowly rose. Perhaps even you don't know.
The future is not predetermined by fate. We will create a future without you, Olak. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out, startling Olak, who turned around. The group, led by Cecilia, had successfully made their way inside.
Conflicts erupted both within and outside the empire because of this, even implicating the royal family of another nation and plunging the entire country into crisis. Pope Hector Bellin will bear full responsibility for this, and the Olak Church.
It's precisely because the future is uncertain that I cherish the present time with you even more, every single moment. Hearing her words, Theo immediately broke into a happy smile. Then he gently,
In the vision I saw, you and I already had children. I think if we had children like us, I would be incredibly happy. What about you, Theo? Theo, blushing, began to speak, but there was one more thing to do first.
With that, Theo planted a passionate kiss on Noemi's lips. Seeing this, Pierre exclaimed, Hey, she hasn't even agreed yet. What's the rush? Theo, uncaring, pressed himself against Noemi. Theo kissed her repeatedly and told her to tell the woman to wait. Outside, the head maid tiredly spoke up.
At the temple, a sincere priest spoke, Thank you for always donating so much. Hugo turned to look and reminded him, Don't forget that money